Hello guys, this is Dark Fox Sage 2 and we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Naruto Abandoned Konoha for Mai Terumi Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. Terumi Mai literally stormed out of the Hokage's office. She was angry. No, she was downright furious. She had traveled to Konoha to seek money, weapons, or even soldiers for the upcoming civil war she was going to lead. It hadn't gone as she had planned. Flashback. Mai was waiting patiently in the waiting room when she heard the voice of the Hokage's secretary call her. Terumi Mai, the Hokage will see you now. The static voice called over the loudspeaker. Mai grinned as she walked into the office of the village's leader. She turned to see an old man in his 50s or 60s. She recognized this man instantly. He was the professor, the proclaimed god of shinobi. He was not a man to be taken lightly due to his old age. Hello Hokage-sama. The chipper women bowed. The Hokage looked to see a young woman with long auburn red hair. She had some of it held with a blue ribbon at the top of her head while a long bang completely covered her right eye. She also had on a long dark blue dress with fishnet under it. She had light green eyes and the Hokage couldn't help but spare a passing glance at her generous assets. She looked to be in her earlier mid-20s. Hello, Mai Terumi, is it? Mai nodded eagerly in response. I understand you have come on important business. The aged leader questioned, earning him another eager nod. Do tell. Mai cleared her throat, ready to begin her explanation. Well, you see, it has come to my, along with many others, attention that our Mizukage, Yagura, is being controlled by another individual. The genjutsu seems to be unbreakable and the only way out is to start a civil war. I have grouped together a large part of Kiri, led by myself, Chojuro of the Seven Swordsmen and Ao, one of my loyal friends and also a hunter nin. The dual bloodline girl explained as she inwardly frowned. She had also hoped that her longtime friend, Momochi Zabuza, would help her lead the army as well. He had been too impatient and attempted an assassination attempt on the Mizukage as soon as Ao verified that he was under a genjutsu. He was followed soon by Kisame, who had also tried to overthrow the government. We were hoping Konoha could supply us with weapons, men, money or other supplies. We will also be changing the certain traits that give us the name, Bloody Mist. Sarutobi nodded and rubbed his chin in thought. He took a long puff of his pipe. I see. Well, I do believe what you are doing is right, Sarutobi started, causing Mai to nod her head anxiously. However, I cannot supply you with anything at the time. Konoha is currently dealing with its own problems regarding the Kyuubi attack. Sarutobi sighed at the shocked expression of the young lady in front of him. I'm really sorry, and if it had been any other time, the old Hokage started only to be interrupted. I understand Hokage-sama. I shouldn't waste any more of your time. Mai practically spat out as she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Flashback end. This brought Mai to where she currently was, walking down the road thinking over what course of action to take next. This is going to be more difficult than I thought. With Raiga, Zabuza and Kisame all gone, that only leaves Chojuro left as anti-Yagura swordsman. Stupid Konoha. Now this is going to be so much more complicated. The auburn-haired woman looked up to see a small blonde-haired boy enter into a shop. She didn't know why she was looking, but all she knew is she couldn't look away. She focused chakra to her ears so she could hear what was happening. Naruto walked up to the counter, hoping to buy himself a meal with the money he had saved up from the Hokage's monthly allowance while he was at the orphanage. He looked up to the old woman who was sitting at the counter. Could I please buy 2 loaves of bread and a gallon of milk? The young blonde asked wearily. He had a white shirt on with an orange spiral on the back. He also had on a blue pair of shorts. The feature that intrigued Mai the most was the 3 whisker-like marks adorning each side of his face. Sure, that will be, the old woman started before she looked down to see who it was. She immediately frowned and glared at the young boy. Oh, What the hell are you doing here? Get out of my shop, you filthy vermin. She then proceeded to chase the young boy, who couldn't be more than 5, out of the store with her broom. May let out a low growl at this. She then appeared in front of the woman in a swirl of water. If I may ask, why would you deny a customer, a young boy no less, food he was willing to pay for? The green-eyed woman asked as she picked up the much older lady by her shirt. The older woman gasped for air. He's a filthy demon, that's why. She responded with venom in her voice. What could a sweet little boy like that do that is demonic? May asked as she raised a single eyebrow. Unfortunately, we are not allowed to speak of that sweet little boy's deeds. The old woman gasped out as May dropped her on her butt and took off after the young blonde. Naruto was walking down the street with his head down. That had been the third shop today he had been denied from. He had even had enough money. He angrily kicked a rock off the ground as he continued to mop around. Maybe living away from the orphanage would be worse than he originally thought. Naruto, unfortunately, was not watching where he was going and accidentally smashed into a humanoid figure. He immediately scurried to his feet to see a very beautiful lady standing there. I'm sorry. I guess I wasn't watching where I was going. Naruto sheepishly rubbed the back of his head as he mentally prepared himself for some sort of punishment. To his immense surprise, the woman merely smiled. Don't worry about it. I couldn't help but see that you weren't allowed to buy from that store back there. Why is that? May questioned curiously. Naruto looked downcast at this. I don't know. They never let me get anything from any of those stores. That was like my fifth today. Naruto whined loudly. This caused the unknown lady to frown. Why don't you tell your parents about this? She inquired. Naruto seemed to look even sadder at the mention of this. Well, I don't have any parents. Don't you live at an orphanage then? May asked. Well, I did, but they kicked me out, so I've been living on my own for the last week. I think I'm going to ask Oji-san for an apartment or something. The young boy responded. May's eyes widened tremendously at this. Don't you have any family at all? Nope. But Oji-san is kinda like a grandpa to me. Naruto responded with a wide smile. Who is the Oji-san you keep talking about? Why doesn't he take you in? May got down on her knees and looked the young boy in the eyes. Well, he is really busy and stuff. He is like the village leader, I guess, Naruto responded carelessly. May was now thoroughly shocked. The Hokage had taken a liking for a measly orphan. But one day I'm gonna be a ninja too, and then everyone will start respecting me. Naruto cheered as he pumped a fist in the air. Do you know how to gather chakra? May looked to the frowning young boy. He shook his head. No. Well, how about I show you? I'm sorry I didn't catch your name. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. Who are you? Naruto asked excitedly. My name is Terumi May. It is nice to meet you, Naruto. She then flashed him a caring smile. To gather chakra, you have to close your eyes and look deep inside yourself. You need to keep searching until you feel a little spark. You then must pull at the spark until it floods through your entire body. It is easier to start in a ram seal. May explained as she showed Naruto how to make a ram seal. Naruto nodded and put his hands in the seal and closed his eyes in concentration. May then waited, and waited, and waited, and waited until she was about to give up. All of a sudden, chakra seemed to explode out of the young boy. It seemed to swirl around him in a protective manner. Impossible, he has nearly genin level reserves and he isn't even in the academy yet. It also seems he has trouble controlling his chakra. May carefully studied Naruto's chakra output. Did I do good? Naruto asked. Yes, Naruto, you did very well. I didn't expect you to have near this much chakra. May explained, causing Naruto to smile at the praise. Sweet. So I'm gonna be a good ninja? Naruto asked. With lots of practice you could be. May responded, causing Naruto to jump up and down in excitement before he settled down and asked May a question. Are you a ninja? Yes, I am. I am not from Konoha, however. I am a ninja from Kurigakure. Kurigakure no Sato is a large village in a small island country known as Water Country. Mei explained. She would admit that in the hour or so she had known the kid he had really started to grow on her. She knew he would make a fine ninja someday. She all of a sudden had a brilliant idea. So Naruto, how do you like it here? She asked seemingly out of nowhere. Naruto hesitated before answering. Well, no one is really nice to me but the Hokage, and I don't have a place to live or much to eat. But Oji-san said that someday I can grow to be a super strong ninja here. Naruto finished with glee. So how would you like to come with me to Kiri? You won't have to worry about living alone anymore and no one will be mean to you for no reason. Also, I can train you so you can be a super strong ninja there. Mei explained. Naruto went wide-eyed at this. To actually live with someone who didn't hate you for once, to not have to dig through the trash to get food, to not have to see all the cold glares every day, it would be nice. He then remembered the smiling face of his grandfather figure. He seemed lost in thought for a few moments. I'll do it. But can we tell Oji-san first? I'm sorry, but we can't tell him, otherwise he might stop you from going. You don't have to come with. Mei trailed off at the end. No, I want to. Naruto replied firmly as he grinned broadly at the bloodline limit wielding woman. Do you have anything you want to bring? Mei asked, only for the young blonde to shake his head. Then let's go. Mei stood up and made a couple hand seals. She then whispered something to herself. Naruto all of a sudden looked like a small brown-haired, brown-eyed boy who was dressed well. What happened? Naruto panicked, looking around wildly. Don't worry, it's just a genjutsu. I can deactivate it whenever I want. The older woman reassured the young Jinchuriki as he nodded and they got up and left. She was stopped at the main gate by the Chunin guards. Halt. State your business for leaving. The Chunin asked. My son and I were visiting my sister who lives in Konoha. We are now heading back to our home, which is located in the land of water. Mei lied. The guard nodded, obviously believing Mei's lie, and motioned for the two to leave. After they were a couple miles away from the village, Mei deactivated the genjutsu as she scooped Naruto up and took off at a sprint towards her agreed meeting spot. So Naruto, tell me about yourself. Mei asked as they were running through the woods. Meeting spot. Ao and Chojuro sat huddled around a fire as Mei jumped down from the trees. Ao seemed to be insulting the underconfident swordsman, as usual. They both turned to see the magma boil user with a young blonde kid in her arms. Ao raised his only exposed eyebrow. Who is the kid? He asked. Chojuro then looked over. Did you pick him up in Konoha? He asked. Indeed I did. He seems to have an almost genin level reserve and is only about 6 years old. He also is not well liked in his home village, so I decided to bring him along. Mei explained. Her two companions merely shrugged. They knew when Mei Terumi was set on something it was going to happen, one way or another. How did the, meeting with the Hokage go? The shy, clearly younger, man asked. Mei growled. Not well, it appears we will not have the backup of Konoha. Apparently they are still recovering from the Kyuubi attack 6 years ago, Mei explained, causing her two companions to growl as well. Fucking bastard. Ao spit out as he unconsciously activated his Byakugan. He glanced over at the young boy to see he did indeed have very large reserves for such a young kid. He saw a small red light and tried to focus in further. He then noticed there was a small amount of this red chakra floating in Naruto's chakra network. Most of it was built up in his abdomen. Mei. The hunter nin asked. Yes. Mei answered. Are you aware that this young boy has a second source of chakra inside of him? It seems not only thicker but more potent than normal chakra as well. Ao explained, gaining the attention of Chojuro as well. Is that possible? Mei asked. Ao just looked at her like she was stupid. Actually it reminds of Yagura. The chakra is much brighter and red in color though, Ao went on. Chojuro widened his eyes at this. What did you say his birthday was? The young swordsman asked wearily. Oh, October 10th, Mei gulped. And what day was the QB attack on? Ao finished. October 10th. That's why the boy's chakra seems so familiar. He's just like Yagura, they are both Jinchuriki. Mei answered, lightly stroking the sleeping boy's head. This young boy contains the QB no Kitsune. Mei finished as she visibly paled. No, this is good. Now we have our own Jinchuriki to even the score with Yagura. Ao exclaimed and Chojuro looked happy as well. You don't get it. Konoha is going to come looking for such an important person, Mei reasoned, sounding worried. Well, what are we going to do about that? The seasoned hunter Nin asked rhetorically. They are not going to find him. From here on out Uzumaki Naruto is no more, dead. He is now Terumi Naruto. Mei stated in a completely serious manner. Mei, I don't think that is a good idea. The Mizukage and whoever is controlling him is bound to look into someone you adopted. Chojuro offered. True. That is why I am going to say I found him in a small town in northern water country. I'm going to say he was abandoned as a young child. I've kept the fact that I have a bloodline secret long enough. How hard could this one be? Mei asked with a small smile on her face. She was completely confident in everything right now. She didn't even worry about anything, not the Konoha hunters, not the mist revolt coming up, not even parenting the young boy she had now adopted in everything but paper. Right then and there the young boy in question's eyes fluttered open. He yawned. Morning. He mumbled out towards Mei. Good morning, Naruto. I'd like you to meet two friends of mine. She pointed at a man wearing a classic Kiri hunter uniform. He also had short hair and large earrings with an eye patch over his right eye. This is Ao. Ao nodded at the young boy. And this, she pointed at a young man wearing a long striped shirt with the Kiri symbol used as a sort of badge. He had on sunglasses and earmuffs. He also wore pants that were gray camouflaged. He had a large two-handled sword on his back. Is Chojuro. Said man smiled at Naruto, who in turn smiled back. Naruto, I have a question for you. Mei mentally prepared herself for the task at hand. Would you like to become a part of my family? Are you saying? Naruto asked, not wanting to be wrong. Yes, I would like to adopt you. Mei explained, feeling as if a large weight was lifted off her shoulders. Naruto just sat there for a moment, absorbing the shock. Yesterday he was a lonely orphan who didn't seem to belong, and today he would finally get a family. He responded with a quick nod. Mei smiled at this. I hope someday I can be like the mom you never had. The red-haired woman said to Naruto as he drifted off into a dreamless sleep, repeating the word, mom, over and over in his head. The next day, Naruto awoke to the smell of fish assaulting his small nostrils. His mouth drooled at the smell of actual food. The young blonde soon found himself sitting beside the man with the weird eye patch, Ao. He seemed to be starting a fire. He turned when Naruto arrived and merely nodded at the young boy. Where is everyone else? Naruto questioned loudly. Mei went to get supplies from a nearby town and Chojuro is trying to catch us some breakfast. Ao answered. They should be back soon. Sure enough, within 15 minutes Mei arrived back at the camp. She didn't seem to have any supplies though. Where's the stuff you bought? Naruto asked, confused. Mei chuckled at this. I put it all in here. She answered as she took out a small scroll. This is a sealing scroll, you use these to store items in with no extra weight added on. Naruto's eyes widened at this. Sweet. Will I be able to do that? Mei nodded. Just then Chojuro arrived with 5 fish on a stick. He started to cook it wordlessly. When it was done he gave one to each of his travel companions. Naruto started to dig into his food like he hadn't eaten well in weeks. He probably hasn't, Mei concluded sorrowfully. When everyone was ready for breakfast and the fire was smothered, Naruto decided to speak up. How far is the Mist Village? He asked. Chojuro answered this in his usual shy voice, Kiri is about a week's travel at a steady pace. I will create a water clone to carry you. Naruto then nodded as the water clone picked him up. It turned out his idea of a steady pace was a lot different than the Kiri Nin's, because soon enough the 3 ninja and 1 clone took off with blinding speed into the trees. After enough ninja training you will be able to move at these speeds as well. Mei answered Naruto's unasked question. Naruto nodded and was again captured by the sights of all the trees blurring by. 1 week later, Naruto was completely lost. They had been traveling through mist for what seemed like days. Mist, 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 and oh yeah, more mist. Are we almost there? Naruto whined for the seemingly 100th time. Yes, Mei muttered impatiently. She by now knew the way to Kiri like the back of her hand, even through the thick mist. The mist had its ups and its downs. It was a bitch to travel through, but it kept foreigners away quite well. Soon enough the mist seemed to clear to reveal an enormous city. Naruto thought it looked so much different than Konoha. The city was made mostly of cylindrical buildings, looking very odd to the blonde-haired boy. There seemed to be one very large, very odd building in the middle of the city. It had the emblem for water on it, just as the Hokage Tower had the emblem for fire. Naruto also noticed there were several large mountains in the back. Welcome to Kiri, Naruto. Mei smiled brightly at the young boy, who smiled back. Mei, Chojuro and Ao were all thinking different thoughts. Mei's were along the lines of, how am I going to take care of a kid? Ao's were about something about the hunter division. Chojuro was thinking about overthrowing the Mizukage and changing Kiri. They all had agreed to oversee the young boy on his training and to help him grow up. He would make a damn fine ninja with his reserves and the fact that he contained the strongest of the 9 Biju. Konoha. A frantic dog-masked Anbu burst through the Hokage's door, startling the old Hokage. Dog, what is the meaning of this? Sarutobi muttered menacingly. He had just gotten to the good part in his Ika Ika paradise. Sir, Uzumaki Naruto has gone missing. Dog sputtered out, causing Sarutobi to drop his pipe in shock. Are you sure? Did you check the orphanage? Ikiruka's ramen stand? The Hokage's monument? The silver-haired Anbu nodded to each and every suggestion, having already checked there. How could this happen? Sarutobi muttered as he rubbed his temples. When did this happen? The last time anyone has seen him was 1 week ago today, sir. The aging Hokage sighed. Kakashi, please take off your mask. He ordered. Kakashi complied, revealing a standard Konoha headband covering his left eye. He had gray, gravity-defying hair and dark black eyes. He had a black mask covering the bottom of his face and neck. Hokage-sama, I'm worried. What if something happened to him? What if someone killed him? Nothing like that happened. If someone had killed him, the villagers would be celebrating. Also, you know as well as I do, no one dares to touch him with the penalty I have made. This leaves 2 options: he was kidnapped, or he left on his own free will, Sarutobi stated, not knowing which option he would have preferred. On one hand, the only people who would kidnap him would be someone who knew about the Kyuubi, or someone who knew about his parentage. Both were well-kept secrets. On the other hand, if Naruto had left on his own free will, Hiruzen would have known he had failed the young boy. Minato, have I really failed this badly? You would be ashamed of the way this village treats your son, the Sandaime thought. Create a team consisting of any Anbu or Jonin you know who are not against the boy. Find out where he went, summon Pakun if you need to. You will return Naruto by the end of the week. The proclaimed god of shinobi ordered with all his authority, intent on righting his wrong. Hi. Kakashi bowed as he replaced his mask and disappeared in a classic leaf body flicker. Sarutobi then started out a letter. He would need his students' help for this. After all, Jiraiya did have one of the best spy networks in the elemental countries. Front gate. 20 minutes later. Kakashi stood in front of a small group of Anbu and Jonin. He looked at his group. The first member was a newly promoted Jonin named Tenzo. He had an artificially planted version of the Shadaime's wood release. The second person was his longtime rival, Maeda Guy, also a Jonin. The next person was the leader of the Aburame clan, Shibi. The last member of the makeshift squad was a Jonin named Sarutobi Asuma. Kakashi nodded to each member and summoned Pakun, his nin dog. Can you track a scent, Pakun? Kakashi asked. Sure. Do you have anything I can smell? Kakashi handed the little pug a small strip of clothing off of Naruto's shirt. Pakun nodded and pointed towards the direction he was headed. All right team, move out. Kakashi ordered as Pakun took off, followed closely by the group of elite ninja. Minato-sensei, I won't let your legacy escape us. The team of elite Jonin and Anbu were traveling through the trees at breakneck speeds. They had to move fast, their targets were at least a week's worth of distance ahead of them. It seems Naruto and the girl he was traveling with camped here. They also met up with 2 other people, definitely male from the smell. Pakun confirmed as he sniffed the campsite. Thank you, Pakun. Which way did they go? Kakashi asked his favorite summon. The dog took lead again as the team began to travel at full speed again. After a couple more hours of straight running, Kakashi began to slow, before coming to an abrupt stop. What is the problem, Kakashi-senpai? Tenzo asked. This is the border with Wave. Wave has a close partnership with Water Country. If we continue to travel we will risk potentially starting a war with Kiri, something we definitely do not need. Kakashi growled as he pounded his fist against a tree. He was beyond furious. Damn it. Why is it that I can never protect anyone? Kakashi asked as he rubbed his pounding fist. He looked at the large dent he had made in the tree and frowned. It's okay, Kakashi. Asuma tried to comfort the pissed of Copy Nin, but to no avail. No, you don't understand just who that child is. Kakashi glared at the chain-smoking Sarutobi. You mean because he houses the Kyuubi? Shibi Aburame asked in his ever-monotone voice, not giving away which way he felt on the subject. No, it's because, Kakashi started only to stop, not wanting to give away the top-secret information. Never mind, forget I ever said anything. Mission failure. Return back to Konoha. Kakashi stated as the team of confused ninja took off at a much slower pace towards the village. Kiri. The 3 missed nin and their companion arrived at the front gate of Kiri shortly. Halt. State your names and business in Kirigakure. The guard demanded. My name is Terumi Mei, Jonin of Kiri. Mei paused and pointed at Chojuro. This is Chojuro, member of the 7 swordsmen, and this is Ao, an elite member of the Hunter Nin squad. Mei answered as she pointed at the eye patch wearing ninja. The rest of Kiri assumed he had just lost an eye, only she, Chojuro and a few others knew what really lay beneath that eye patch. And the kid? The guard motioned towards the young blonde suspiciously. This kid has a name. His name is Uzumaki Naruto. He was an abandoned orphan I found in northern Water Country. I have grown fond of the boy and decided to adopt him. Mei stated, causing the guard to raise an eyebrow. Northern Water, you say? Is he one of the freaks? The guard asked, referring to the bloodline limit wielders. Mei growled on the inside at the man's prejudice towards bloodlines. No. His family was killed by the recent Kagaya invasion. Mei made up on the spot. The guard merely nodded and let the 3 ninja in. Ow, Chojuro. Go report the mission to the Mizukage while I bring Naruto home. Mei commanded, causing the 2 men to grumble but grudgingly take off anyway. The 2 arrived at Mei's apartment shortly. This is my home, Naruto. I know it isn't much, but what I have is now yours. Mei smiled at the smiling blonde. A lone tear flowed down Naruto's slender face, lacking any fat at all. Mei wondered if this was from malnourishment or a side effect of being a Jinchuriki. She, however, opted to not worry about it as she tried to soothe Naruto. It's okay, please don't cry. What's wrong? Mei panicked, hoping she didn't do anything wrong. Naruto sniffed and rubbed his tear away. That's not it. I've never lived with anyone who cared about me before, Naruto admitted, causing Mei to frown. Well, you won't have to worry about that, ever again. The dual bloodline limit wielder announced. Naruto grinned at this. It wasn't a fake smile, but a real, happy, smile. Perhaps it was one of the first of Naruto's young life. Mei looked out her window at the clouds, wondering what the future had in store. 5 years later, Naruto. Mei called out as she chased behind the energetic blonde. He laughed as he ran, paint buckets in hand. Mei caught him in a matter of seconds and soon she had him in a mother scolding hold, you know the type. Tell me why you thought it was necessary to write that all over our wall. Mei rolled her eyes at her son's antics. Written in bold letters was a long phrase. It read, "To whom it may concern, this house once belonged to Terumi Mei and Terumi Naruto before they overthrew the Yondaime Mizukage. By now you will have recognized the names of the Godaime and Rokudaime Mizukages, possibly future if the former is still in charge. We aren't in the village anyway, so why does it matter?" Naruto whined. Naruto and Mei were currently in one of their cabins, as Naruto liked to call them. The two went to these cabins with our Chojuro, sometimes both, a few times a year for a prolonged period of time to train Naruto more than they could inside the paranoid Mizukage's village. They used the cover of the fake missions they had sent to the Mizukage's office. That doesn't matter. You ruined a perfectly good wall. The reddish-brown-haired woman growled at her son's destructive behavior. Mei had not changed much in the last 5 years. She still wore the same clothes and behaved much the same. However, she was now much wiser and felt a lot older after parenting a growing boy. Naruto, however, had changed phenomenally. No longer was there the malnourished, scared child that he once was. He was now of average height for a 10-year-old, standing at a little over 4 feet 3 inches. He wore a blue shirt with the Uzumaki spiral across his back. He wore a pair of dark black, loose, pants as well. The physical changes were the least of his changes. Mei, Chojuro, and Ao had been training him in the shinobi arts as well. It seemed he was a natural at the stuff. He already had a decent, even for a genin, jutsu supply. His jutsu included the hidden mist jutsu, the water clone, the replacement, the transformation, the water bullet and the water wall. He also had mastered a few other low-level ninjutsu. In the area of taijutsu, Naruto had progressed astoundingly. He was currently learning Mei's personal style, one she hoped to pass down the Terumi line. Chojuro was teaching Naruto how to wield a sword to a basic level and Ao was teaching him how to use Senbon needles. Naruto had also progressed mentally as well. He knew about the Kyuubi, his mother had told him when he turned 10. She told him she felt he was ready to learn the information. Truthfully, he wasn't surprised. He had heard the villagers call him things like demon, monster, fox, and his birthday was on the 10th of October. That also explained his godly stamina, his amazing chakra reserves, high chunin level as of now, and his whisker marks. He had also learned about his mother's bloodline limits. He was at first surprised, but he thought they were really cool, and truthfully, he was jealous. Mei then suddenly popped a Cheshire grin. You're repainting the wall. What? Naruto suddenly looked terrified. Don't complain, you ruined it. And the faster you get it done, the quicker we can start your new, advanced training. Mei smiled, confident she had a hook, line, and sinker. Naruto immediately saluted his adopted mother and created a large group of water clones to do the work with him. After repainting the wall, do you think you are ready for your advanced training? Mei asked, already knowing the answer. Yes. Naruto cheered as he pumped his fist in the air. Mei nodded and Chojuro walked out of the house. How long has Chojuro ni-san been here? Naruto asked as he looked questionably at his big brother figure. I asked him to come for a special reason, Chojuro, if you will. Mei looked expectantly at the swordsman. As you know, some of the 7 swordsmen, like myself and Kisame, have special swords. These swords were the weapons of the first 7 who were chosen to be the swordsmen. Chojuro explained. Well, the other 5 legendary swords were taken from their owners in battle. They are all gone. The shy man explained. Naruto wasn't sure where he was going with this, but let him continue regardless. We have found the location of another one of the swords. It is buried in a cave in northern water country. We are going to get it for you. Chojuro finished. What kind of ability does it have? Naruto yelled excitedly. The blades are different for every user, they change depending on your chakra type, blood type and soul type. Chojuro explained in his lecture mode. Naruto nodded, wide-eyed. The journey will take about 5 days. You and Chojuro will travel alone. Mei butted into the conversation. Why aren't you coming? The 10-year-old boy asked. I have some other business to take care of, was all Mei said as she hugged her son and said goodbye. He returned the hug and soon the duo was on their way. Ao appeared from the shadows. Ao, I have a mission for you. Mei ordered. What is it? The Byakugan wielder asked. You are to infiltrate Konoha, and you are to leave with the personal techniques of the Yondaime Hokage. Mei answered, surprising Ao substantially. The Yondaime Hokage's techniques. Are you insane? Those are possibly some of the strongest jutsu in the world. If it was within my abilities to steal them, someone else would have already. Ao tried to reason with the clearly insane woman. Yes, but we have something no one else has, Mei replied smoothly as she threw Ao a layout of the Yondaime's personal home and a small vial of red liquid. Whose blood is this? Ao questioned suspiciously. Naruto's, Mei admitted. You don't mean. Ao's eyes were the size of dinner plates now. I'm not positive, but I believe Naruto is the son of the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha. Mei answered, confirming the man's suspicions. Ao stared right through his leader, as if asking her to confirm her words. Well, you see, I first assumed this when I saw the Yondaime's face on the mountain. I then looked at the young boy and thought, hey, they look alike. I decided to look into it, and when we found out he was the Kyuubi's container, it furthered my suspicion. Who better to seal a demon into than your own son? Mei took a breath, but the part that made me believe so strongly was when I found his name mentioned in a book. This book was the very first book ever written by Jiraiya of the Sannin. It didn't sell very many copies, but the name of the main character was Naruto. I later found out that Jiraiya of the Sannin was the fourth's teacher. I see, so you believe the fourth named his son after his teacher's book. And you want me to use this blood for a blood seal that is almost certainly located on the fourth's personal vault. Ao summed up. Mei nodded and he sighed. He grudgingly nodded and disappeared into the trees. With Naruto and Chojuro, are we there yet? Naruto whined loudly as the ninja to be traveled through the mist of water country. No, we still have a ways to go. Chojuro replied, getting angry at the annoying blonde. He had been constantly asking that same question for the last 5 days. Naruto nodded and waited about 10 minutes in silence. Are we there yet? He loudly interrupted the much-needed silence, well in Chojuro's case. No, and stop asking. Chojuro growled, showing unusual amounts of anger. Naruto nodded again, and this time the silence was for about an hour or so. Are we? Naruto started but was interrupted as he slammed into Chojuro's back. There yet? He finished. Yes, Chojuro replied as he pointed to the cave. It happened to be collapsed with rocks, unfortunately. How are we going to get in? Naruto asked. Chojuro smirked. He then unsheathed his two-handled sword and turned it into its hammer form. He slammed the large hammer against the boulders, causing them to clear away. Naruto was in awe of the strength the underconfident man possessed. They continued to walk deep into the cave in silence. Chojuro was getting frustrated. He couldn't find the blade anywhere. Furthermore, he turned to see Naruto walking in his own direction. Wait, where are you going? Chojuro yelled towards the not responding blonde. He didn't get an answer, so he just followed the young boy until they both emerged into a large clearing. In the middle was an enormous blade. It seemed to be 6 feet long from blade to handle. Naruto was slowly walking towards the blade and reached out to grab it. Chojuro waited to see what was going to happen. Naruto grabbed the blade and at first nothing happened. He seemed to wield the blade rather effortlessly for it having to weigh as much as him. I thought you said, Naruto began, only to be cut off as a blinding light enveloped him. Chojuro ran forward. Naruto! He yelled as the light cleared away. Standing in front of him was the same Naruto he had grown accustomed to in the last few years. There was one change, however. Instead of the enormous 6-foot blade, there was one small wakashi and a katana in Naruto's left and right hands. A small breeze of ever-constant wind was swirling around the young boy. Whoa, what happened? Naruto murmured. Looking at the blades, it seemed one was about twice as long as the other. The longer blade had the kanji for wind, while the smaller had the kanji for fire. Chojuro looked with wide eyes. They don't look like much, Chojuro admitted. Naruto nodded. Try to focus chakra into them, Chojuro suggested. Naruto focused chakra into the blade labeled fire, and the blade immediately ignited into untamed flame. Naruto dropped the sword in shock. Oh my god! He yelled as he focused chakra into his other blade. The katana then started to glow blue as the wind around Naruto started to swirl uncontrollably around his body. What's happening? Naruto cried out as the wind typhoon swirled around him relentlessly. Rocks and dust was kicking up, but Naruto seemed to be fine. Naruto, the blade is feeding off of your chakra, cut the flow. Chojuro yelled through the howling wind. Naruto stopped the flow and immediately the wind died down to the gentle breeze it was before. Chojuro sighed and walked over to pick up Naruto's new wakashi. He grabbed it by the handle and was surprised as he immediately dropped it. Ouch! Hot! Chojuro yelled as he dropped the sword on the ground. Naruto walked over and studied the blade. Be careful, Chojuro started, only for the young blonde to pick up the blade and look at him quizzically. It doesn't feel hot to me. Naruto raised an eyebrow at his mentor's shock. Maybe it cooled down when I dropped it, Chojuro reasoned as he went to grab the blade again, only to experience similar results. It looks like only you can grab the blade. I'm assuming it is the same with your katana as well. Naruto looked wide-eyed at the two blades that he had sheathed at his sides. All of a sudden a face-splitting grin enveloped Naruto's face. Sweet. The young Jinchuriki chirped. So what do you think I can do with them? He asked, referring to his new swords. I am assuming the wakashi will give you control over fire through it, and the katana will do the same with wind. Although you will have to find your own limits and abilities with them. The swordsman finished, causing Naruto to nod. Let's get back to the base in case Mei needs us. With this the two swordsmen took off towards their makeshift home. Back with Mei. I know. He is starting to put two and two together. It won't be long until Yagura, and whoever he is being controlled by, finds out about Naruto's tenant. Mei whispered in a sorrowful voice to a shadowy figure. The shadowy figure nodded in understanding. We must move within the year. We definitely must wait for Ao and Chojuro to get back. The shadowy figure whispered. I know. Get Yurigu and Namiko and tell them that in 1 year's time, the Mizukage will fall and mist will return to its rightful place at the top. Mei commanded and the shadow nodded and disappeared. Mei sighed and started to rub her temples. Being the leader of a rebellion was a lot more work than she had thought. We're home, Naruto yelled as he creaked open the door. He soon walked in and was followed by Chojuro. Mei hugged Naruto and nodded to Chojuro. Did you get the sword? Mei inquired. Naruto nodded and pointed to his waist. Swords. Naruto corrected. Mei looked in shock. 2. What do they do? Well, the small one apparently has power over fire, well, the longer one can control wind. Naruto answered with unusual seriousness in his voice. Mei smiled and motioned for Naruto to leave the room. What is it? Chojuro asked nervously. The rebellion is going to happen sooner than expected. Mei whispered in a hushed tone. The shy swordsman's eyebrows shot up. How sooner? He asked. In 1 year's time, Mei answered. Are you kidding? That's a whole 4 years ahead of the original plan. The sharp-toothed man yelled. I know, Yagura is getting suspicious about our recent activities, especially involving Naruto. I'm afraid that if we wait that long, it will be too late. Mei whispered as she looked down at the ground. I see. Where is Ao? Chojuro asked quizzically. He is on a mission. This was all Mei said in return. Chojuro understood that he was not to keep pondering, so he changed the subject. What are we going to do about Naruto? Mei frowned at this. It may be harsh to put such a young boy in a battle that will be happening, but I'm afraid we have to. If Yagura sees how strong such a young boy is, along with his Jinchuriki status, he may become hesitant. Mei answered. They both knew hesitance and confidence were as important as power in wars. What do you mean? I know Naruto's strong, but he isn't that strong. Chojuro questioned. That is why in the next year, all of my and your free time will be towards training Naruto. You will teach him how to wield his swords and silent killing while I teach him chakra control, other techniques, and taijutsu. We must have him at least Chunin level, or higher, by the time of the rebellion. Mei answered. Chojuro nodded in return. Naruto. Mei called upstairs. The young boy yelled. What? In return. Come down here. Mei finished as her son walked down the stairs. Yeah, Naruto asked excitedly. Would you please focus chakra into this card? The older woman asked as she handed Naruto a small rectangular card. It was pure white. Like this. Mei then focused her chakra into a similar card and a third of it crumbled to dust, a third of it burnt and a third of it got wet. Naruto looked confused at this. When you focus chakra into these cards, they will show you your elemental affinity. I have earth, fire and water, so my card burnt, got wet, and crumbled to dust. If you have wind, it will split in half and lightning will crumple up. Mei finished explaining to her young son, student. He made an O with his mouth and then focused his own chakra into the paper. The paper split into thousands of tiny pieces and those pieces then burst into flame. Mei's visible eye widened. Impossible, she trailed off. What is it? Chojuro asked, also confused. A wind user is supposed to split the card in half, but Naruto, he split the card into thousands of tiny pieces, and they caught a flame, meaning he is extremely adept towards the element wind and he already has a secondary element, fire. Mei finished, leaving her lecture mode. Whoa, sweet. Naruto shouted and pumped his fist into the air. Mei was never more confident about the future than she was right now. Nothing could stop her. Her rebellion, her family. Namikaze estate. It should be right about here, the masked form of Ao whispered to himself as he was searching around the Namikaze estate. The place wasn't all that big, but it was very complicated. Ao would vouch for that. He wiped a bead of sweat off his eyebrow and skimmed his hand across the wall. The blood seal should be here, Ao whispered as he spread some of Naruto's blood on the seal. At first nothing happened. A full minute later the seals on the wall became bright red and the wall slowly opened, revealing a room full of scrolls. I'll be damned, the kid really is the son of the fourth Hokage. Ao whispered in an impressed voice. He searched for the two specific scrolls he was sent to find. Of course, he couldn't steal the scrolls, or risk causing a war with Konoha. That didn't stop him from copying the contents onto a different scroll. He searched through the library for about 10 minutes until he found something. Rasengan, this was one of them. Ao pulled out a blank scroll and used a data transfer jutsu to copy the content of the Rasengan scroll onto his blank one. He then searched again for what seemed like hours until he was about ready to give up. If I were the scroll to the most powerful jutsu on the planet, where would I be? Ao questioned himself dryly. He then decided to take a break, so he sat on a chair. The chair collapsed and the leg fell off. Crap. The Kiri hunter frantically picked up the leg and he was surprised to see a scroll fall out. Bingo. The scroll was labeled Horaishin no Jutsu, or the Flying Thunder God. Ao smirked and used his data transfer jutsu again. He then replaced the scroll and body flickered out of the house. Small cave outside river country. So it's true then? A dark figure asked a hazy man with gray eyes. He had a ripple-like pattern in his eyes. Yes. The QB container was spotted walking in northern water country. The man answered. The figure with dual Sharingan eyes widened his eyes. The Sandaime had announced Naruto as dead, according to his spy network. And you are sure it is him? He matched the description perfectly. And there is more, he was traveling with a member of the current Seven Swordsmen. Chojuro to be exact, the Rinnegan wielder announced. So he's been living under mist this whole time. That fool, the genjutsu we placed on Yagura hasn't broken, so maybe he has help from outside forces, the Uchiha muttered lowly. What should we do, Madara? Do we slip Yagura the information? He asked curiously. We will let Yagura work it out on his own. I have no need for him anyway. Madara ordered, causing the other man to widen his eyes. Are you sure? What if the genjutsu breaks, or one of the Jinchuriki kill the other? The man asked wearily. Don't worry, Pain. I've modified Yagura's seal so if he should die, the Sanbi will be loose on the world once again. From there we can capture it either way. I have confidence the Kyuubi won't die. Its healing abilities are too great an obstacle. Madara answered. The other man, now identified as Pain, widened his eyes in shock. I didn't realize you studied seals. He pointed out. The Sanbi's seal is one of the lesser complicated seals. I was also Mizukage, if you remember, so I had lots of time to study the seal. Madara stated in a monotone voice. I trust there is nothing else. Pain asked. Madara merely shook his head and walked away. In Konoha, Jiraiya stormed into the office of his one-time sensei. If the man was surprised he was here, he didn't show it. What can I do for you, Jiraiya-kun? Sarutobi asked cheerily. I have some information you'd like to know. Jiraiya looked dead serious, so the Sandaime activated his privacy seals. Yes. The old Hokage asked his student. Do you want the bad or the worse? Jiraiya asked, causing Sarutobi to raise his eyebrows. The bad first. Sarutobi concluded. Uzumaki Naruto, Jiraiya started. Sarutobi's breath quickened at this one word. It had so much meaning. Has been spotted in northern water country. He was traveling with a member of the Seven Swordsmen. The Toad Hermit muttered melancholy. So he is in fact a part of Kiri. This complicates things, we can't just go in and grab him, or risk a war with Mist. If we demand him back we would have to state why we want him. We don't even know if they know about his Jinchuriki status, if they did we wouldn't ever get him back. The Sandaime concluded, wondering what could be worse than this. And the worse. There is a new formed group called Akatsuki. Currently they have 10 members. The only ones I know about are Orochimaru, Uchiha Itachi, and Hoshigaki Kisame. The old sage muttered, downcast at the name of his old friend turned traitor. Their objective is to capture the 9 Biju. What they will do with them, I don't know. Sarutobi's eyes widened to new extents at this realization. This means the rest are probably S-ranked criminals as well. This isn't good. Jiraiya shook his head at this and left in an extremely terrible mood. Back with Ao. Ao hopped up to the window. It was late at night, if the pitch blackness was anything to go by. He opened up the window and slipped inside. He was greeted with a sight he wouldn't soon forget. Mei walked out, wearing only a wet, tight towel. A small drip of blood slid down Ao's nose. Oh my god. You perverted bastard. Mei screamed. Ao shook his hands in front of him, hoping to be able to get away from the beating he was likely going to get. No, I swear, I didn't know. He yelled defensively. Mei seemingly accepted this and walked back into the bathroom. She came back out with her usual attire. They were all business now. Mission status. Mei questioned. Completed. Naruto is indeed the son of the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha. Ao confirmed the bloodline user's suspicions. This is wonderful. When Kiri is under our control, having the heir to the yellow flash would put fear in the hearts of Iwa, Kumo and even Konoha. Mei rubbed her hands in delight. We have to tell Naruto about this. He deserves to know. The hunter Nin reasoned. Mei sighed. I know, I'll tell him in the morning. With this the two shinobi both went towards their respective bedrooms, intent of getting there 8 hours. They were both wondering about the future of their blonde-haired friend, and son in Mei's case. Mei sighed as she looked across the table at her adopted son, Naruto. She bit her lip, hard enough to draw blood. The light red-haired woman was very worried at what she was about to say. Naruto, I have something I need to tell you, Mei trailed off. This gained the attention of both Naruto and Chojuro. Ao, already knowing what Mei was going to say, just sat back and watched the show. Yeah, Naruto asked as he swallowed his food. Mei took a deep breath. We discovered who your father is, Mei admitted. A loud clang was heard as Naruto dropped his fork in shock. Who? Naruto asked, wide-eyed. Your father was a man named Minato Namikaze. He was the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha. Mei let out in one breath. Naruto's mouth opened in shock, before closing. He sat there, motionless, for a good 5 minutes. Mei didn't know what to think. How did you find out? Naruto suddenly asked. I had my suspicions, but we didn't know until Ao infiltrated Konoha and stole the Yondaime's personal jutsu, using your blood to get by the blood seals. Mei answered her son's question. Naruto nodded, apparently accepting that answer. I see, I guess that makes sense. Why else would he choose me as the contain? Naruto started before something dawned on him. I get to learn the Yondaime's techniques. Naruto all of a sudden screamed. Mei chuckled. Yes, but not until you are older. For one, the Hirishin requires you to have a fully developed body, or else it could affect your growth. You will be able to learn the Rasengan when I deem you ready. For now I have a jutsu for you. It's called the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Mei then proceeded to explain the concept and benefits of the Shadow Clone. She knew Naruto would take this jutsu like a fish does to water. 1 year later, Kiri. Naruto stood next to a group of older ninja. There was his mother, Chojuro, Ao, and a few people he had never met before. They were standing on a stage in front of a group of people. They were the rebellion's main forces. There were about 1,800 people in total. His full undivided attention was on his mother, Mei. As you all know, the rebellion will commence as planned in 3 days' time. Mei announced, causing uproars of cheering. These people were ready for the bloody mist to come to an end. This war could take many years, and many of us will lose our lives, but it is for a greater cause. You will all play a role in freeing Kiri from the grasp of Yagura. The cheers doubled at this point. Now I bid you all farewell. You know what you are to do. Mei ended as the crowd nodded and left to their respective houses. Naruto had trained to the point of exhaustion for the last year. He had basically spent the majority on silent killing, kenjutsu, taijutsu and ninjutsu. He had the skill level of a mid-chunin without using the Kyuubi's chakra. He could also control about a tael's worth of chakra without going insane and killing everyone. He had made great progress with his swords. The blonde had even found he could connect the 2 swords to make one long, double-sided sword. He hadn't practiced focusing chakra into the double-edged sword yet. His teachers advised him to wait until he had a better grasp of combining his elemental chakra. After everyone was gone, Mei and Chojuro walked up to Naruto. Naruto, I know you don't like it, but you are most likely going to have to use the Kyuubi's chakra at one point or another. Mei frowned, knowing her son was against using his demon's chakra. Naruto nodded. He knew he was going to have to. He also knew he wouldn't use the fox's chakra unless he really needed to. I know. I will continue to train throughout the war as well so I won't have to depend on it very much. Naruto grinned. Mei still looked uncertain. What's wrong? Naruto asked his adopted mother. Nothing. It's just, exposing such a young child to a life like this. Many people are going to die, and I just don't think I could handle it if you died. Mei was openly sobbing at this point. Naruto embraced the taller women, trying to calm her down. Don't worry mom, I promise I won't die. Believe it. Naruto grinned at his mom, who soon grinned as well. Sorry to interrupt such a touching moment, Chojuro butted in. But what is the plan for us that are currently not camping out in the outskirts? You, Ao, Nakai, Naruto and I are currently the only people in the rebellion that are stationed in Kiri. We will attack the Mizukage directly. I don't plan to kill him right away, but we must distract him as the main force attacks from the west gate. Mei explained. Truthfully, she and Chojuro would fight the Mizukage, while Naruto, Ao and Nakai would take on his Anbu guards. Nakai was one of Mei's trusted advisors. He was a tall man, standing at a little above 6 feet 3 inches. He had light brown hair with a small goatee. He had hazel eyes and a long scar running down the side of his face. Nakai served in Kiri's Anbu for many years. Please leave, I must make the final preparations for the upcoming war. The bloodline user motioned for her friends and son to leave. They all nodded and disappeared in body flickers. Naruto then went off to start some more training. Woods surrounding Kiri. Naruto stood in the middle of a clearing with a water balloon in his hand. He read in the Rasengan scroll that you needed to focus chakra in 2 directions at once. He thought it would be easy. Boy, was he wrong. Gah, why doesn't this work? Naruto yelled out in frustration as he continued to try and pop the damned balloon. No matter how hard he tried, he just couldn't pop the thing. He decided to look back in the scroll. Naruto searched the scroll many times but couldn't find any hints. No wonder it took the Yondaime 3 years. Naruto yelled to himself. Mei smiled from in a tree. She was proud of her son's perseverance. Many others would have quit by now. Not Naruto though. He didn't know the meaning of the words, too hard. Mei sighed as Naruto passed out from exhaustion. He was unaware he had been training for a little over 5 hours. 2 days later, Naruto stood to the side of his mother, who was currently addressing the army about their plans. Giving them war talk and such. Naruto was happy he had completed the first step of the Rasengan, although he knew it was an uphill battle from there. He rested his hands on the handles of his 2 weapons, no partners. Just as Chojuro had said, he had come to a point where the blades were merely extensions of him, limbs of their own. Today we'll start a battle which will free the mist from everything that Yagura has done. We will no longer have to fear being killed, no longer will we have to put up with this. This war will take a long time, many will die. But you all knew that before you agreed to join. Now take your places, when you see the signal, attack. The crowd roared in approval and Mei, Naruto, Ao, Chojuro and Nakai made their way to the Mizukage's tower. They arrived and calmly walked into the office of Yagura, who seemed to be filling out papers. Mei, Chojuro, Ao, Nakai, what a pleasant surprise, what can I do for you? Yagura asked innocently, as if he wasn't the reason hundreds have died. As if he wasn't the reason Mist wasn't a place you would want to be. Truthfully, he probably wasn't, it was whoever was controlling him. Who is your young friend? Yagura asked harshly as his eyes narrowed. Mei growled. At this sign a group of hidden Anbu appeared. It's time that the mist becomes free again. Mei yelled as she lunged at the Mizukage, intent at taking off his head. The Anbu went to intercept her, only to be stopped by Ao, Naruto and Nakai. Your fight is with us. Ao stated motionlessly. He glanced at Naruto, as if inwardly telling him to not get too involved and to play a backseat role in this fight. The Anbu unsheathed their swords. Ao then lifted his eye patch, revealing an implanted Byakugan. The 4 Anbu gasped. You implanted the eye of a Keki Genki user. How dare you defile your face with such disgustingness? You will die today. The leader of the group challenged. Ao merely took a stance. Nakai pulled out his dual scimitars and Naruto unsheathed his swords. He had named them Kazaiba and Rukin. Mei attempted to stab the man with a kunai, only for him to block at the last second. You're trying to fight me. We both know you are no match for me. Yagura pointed out. Mei smirked and formed a set of seals, before spitting out a blob of molten magma at her wide-eyed opponent. A Kekai Genkai. Interesting, the 3-tailed Jinchuriki smirked before going back to engage his opponent. West Gate. 2 gate guards were standing at the gate. Neither of them was paying much attention as nothing had happened in years. One of the guards looked up when he heard the noise of feet hitting dirt. He saw a group of 1,000 or more men and women charging at the gate. His eyes immediately opened wide. Die! He started but was cut off as a kunai planted itself into his neck. His partner looked shocked before the same thing happened to him. The group continued throughout Kiri, killing as many ninja as they could before the village regrouped and pushed them out. They were intending to cause as much damage as possible before that happened. Mizukage's office. What do you hope to gain from this? There are many followers of mine that will continue even if I'm dead, Yugura questioned the girl as he caught her punch and backhanded her back. Mei growled before shooting another blob of lava at the Mizukage. He dodged it but it burnt deep in his desk. That's for me to know and you to wish you knew. Mei countered as she landed a solid punch on the man's face. Yugura growled and decided to retreat, seeing as he was short on Anbu. Ow! And Nakai had each took on 2 Anbu, well Naruto was backup, only interfering if need be. Ao was handling himself pretty well. He was currently sealing off some chakra points in the right Anbu's chest. He was so preoccupied he didn't notice the other Anbu charging in until it was too late. Or so he thought. Decapitating swing. Naruto yelled as he swung his large katana. As soon as he did this, an enormous blade of wind shot out and decapitated the incoming Anbu. Ao nodded at the young blonde, who nodded back. Ao finished with a palm strike to his opponent's heart. They turned to see Nakai, electricity searing through him, standing over the 2 dead bodies of Anbu. All of a sudden a green haze started to form around Yugura. With newfound strength, courtesy of his Biju, he swatted Mei away and jumped out the window. Mei growled, but remembered it would never be this easy. This was only the beginning. The group of ninja jumped out of the window, only to be surrounded by about 50 low-level ninja. Naruto grinned as he pulled out Rukin. His blade then ignited into flame, surprising the ninja. He disappeared in a burst of speed and left third-degree burns on 3 of the surprised opponents. The son of the Yondaime could have killed the 3, but he didn't want to. They didn't have to kill all of the Kiri nin, as they needed some for when they took over Kiri. Nakai sent out a pulse of electricity, knocking out a group of ninja. The 5 took this path and quickly escaped. Split up. I'll go with Ao and Nakai to damage the crops, while Naruto and Chojuro will return to join the main attack force. Mei commanded. The 5 nodded and split into the 2 groups. Naruto and Chojuro ran in silence through the mist. They both knew where they were going, both being trained in silent killing. All of a sudden 2 ninja jumped down and confronted them. One of the men was a man of average height, being 5 feet 11 inches. He had wavy blonde hair and piercing green eyes. He wore a classic gray Kiri Jonin vest and black pants. The other man was of similar build, being about 6 feet even. He had short black hair and dark raven eyes. They shared one thing in common. They both had large zanbatos strapped to their backs. Well, if it isn't my old friends, Chojuro said, trying to hide his uncertainty. Naruto noticed this. Who are they? These 2 and Hojoshi Inuzi and Daichui Kurusuke. They are members of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist. Inuzi is the 5th seat, and Kurusuke is the 7th. Chojuro added. He himself was the 4th seat, while Raiga was the 3rd, Zabuza was the 2nd, and Kisame was the 1st. Naruto gulped. He knew they were in for a battle. Hehe. Chojuro, I've always wanted to show you that I deserve the 4th seat. I guess now you'll just have to die. Inuzi growled as he unsheathed his blade. His sword was about 5 feet long. It had a gray wolf carved into the silver metal and came to a wicked curve. It looked like a very big scimitar. Chojuro glared and unsheathed his own sword, Hirokimi. Kurusuke looked at Naruto and unsheathed his sword. It was a normal katana for the most part. The only difference was it was pitch black and had a chain attached to it. The other side of the chain was wrapped around his arm. Naruto glared at the older man and unsheathed Kazaiba. The wind seemed to pick up and spun around Naruto in a protective manner. Kursuke made the first move as he literally heaved the sword at Naruto, throwing it like a spear. Naruto dodged and the blade stuck into the ground. Kursuke merely yanked on the chain and the blade came sailing back. Naruto swung at the older man and sent a blade of wind at him. Kursuke gasped and dodged. "You already know elemental manipulation?" he asked in a gruff voice. "Not really. Kazaiba here has the ability to control wind, like so." Naruto answered as he thrust the blade forward and an enormous gust of wind bulleted at the older man. Caught off guard, Kurusuke was sent flying into a pile of dust. He got up and brushed himself off. "Nice trick, kid, but now it's time to get serious." Naruto didn't even see the man move as he was suddenly in front of him. The man took a swing at Naruto, who in turn brought Kazakiri up to block the blow. Naruto grunted at the power behind the man's swing. If this was the seventh seat, he didn't even want to think about how powerful the first was. The man continued his relentless assault of Kenjutsu. Naruto barely blocked or dodged each swipe. He knew when he was outmatched. Kursuke grinned all of a suddenly. "Not bad, kid. But I gotta finish this now." With that, the man started a set of hand seals. Water style. Water dragon jutsu. Kursuke yelled as a large dragon of water materialized out of the nearby lake. It came towards Naruto at alarming speeds. Naruto grinned as a tornado of wind surrounded him, easily absorbing the blow. He called it the wind shield. Not very original of a name, but it was a handy jutsu to have, especially when he didn't need hand seals when he had Kazaiba out. The older man growled before charging again. Naruto smirked as Kursuke overextended his arm. The blonde Jinchuriki caught the arm and spun the older man around himself counterclockwise. He then attempted to deliver a finishing sword strike, only to find out that it was a water clone. He knew he'd fallen into a trap when two hands extended out of nowhere and locked him in a water prison. "I'll admit it, you're good. But not good enough. You made a mistake in thinking that I would overextend my arm in a situation like that." Kursuke grinned as he prepared to finish the young boy in front of him. "I guess this is a good time as any. Give me some chakra." Naruto mentally yelled as all of a sudden a red haze started to build up in the water prison. It wasn't blood, Kursuke noted. The water started to boil and soon the entire prison fell apart. Kursuke's eyes widened as he saw the man, no thing, in front of him. Naruto's fangs were lengthened to abnormal length. His three whisker marks were even more defined and his hair was much more animalistic. His eyes were also blood red with slits for pupils. Those were the minor changes. He had a cloak, for the lack of a better word, of chakra surrounding his body. The cloak surrounded his head and looked like fox ears, while there was a single billowing tail from behind Naruto. Jinchuriki. Kursuke yelped. Naruto then disappeared in a surprising burst of speed and already had Rukin unsheathed. He would have taken off the man's head if he didn't have an amazing reaction time. The blade then ignited into flame and burned right through Kursuke's own sword. The blade went through Kursuke's sword like a hot knife through butter and proceeded to behead the man. Naruto looked down sadly at the corpse as the red chakra dispersed. He turned to see that Chojuro had already finished off his two opponents, although he had a couple of deep-looking wounds. One in particular seemed to be gushing blood fast. "It seems the news of your tenant is now out to the entire world, Naruto." Chojuro muttered weakly. Naruto rushed over and frantically picked up the larger man. "Chojuro, are you okay?" Naruto screamed. He wanted to believe Chojuro would be alright, he really did. "Yeah, get me back to the med nins. I'll be fine." Chojuro tried to sound strong, but it was hard with the amount of blood he was losing. Naruto pulled some bandages out of his pouch and tried to wrap his friend's wound. He then lifted him up as carefully as possible and brought him back to camp. Later that day, Rebellion Camp. Mei stood smiling in front of the large group again. They had already suffered several losses, but she was proud to note that they hadn't lost as many people as Kiri did. She frowned at the thought of all the lives that were going to be lost. Mei knew it was for the best. The group was celebrating the victory, no matter how small. Mei walked into the back room to see Naruto standing over Chojuro. How is he? Mei asked, hoping for a good answer. The doctors said he was pierced in the stomach, he should make a full recovery. Naruto responded. His voice didn't have any of the usual vigor. That's great news. Is something the matter? Mei asked with a frown. Yes. How many people are going to die? Naruto immediately looked up into the eyes of his adopted mother. Mei sighed at this. Many people, unfortunately. We just have to remember that this is for the best. They knew all the dangers and wanted to fight regardless. Mei answered cryptically. Naruto nodded his head. I'm going to train. He tried to get up, only for Mei to sit him back down. Come on, celebrate with us. Mei pleaded towards her clearly distressed son. I can't. The stronger I get, the less people will die. Naruto answered with a grin as his body flickered away. Mei sighed at her son's attitude. He truly was a train-aholic. She hoped once this war ended, he would become the bright ball of joy he always was. 1 year later, Naruto stood in front of a large group of men. He was now taking part as the hardest mission of his life. Their objective was simple. They were to infiltrate the house of Utakata and eliminate him. He was one of the strongest ninja currently on the other side. Naruto had trained non-stop in his free time and was now a high Chunin low Jonin level ninja. He was with a group of Jonin level ninja. Some wondered why the young boy was on such an important mission. It was not only for his talent but also because he had certain advantages with the Kyuubi. They would prove essential against Utakata. Utakata is the Jinchuriki of the Rokubi. His Biju is a six-tailed slug. He is reported as the second or third strongest man on our enemy's team, with his Biju. Our mission is to eliminate him. He should be in his home right now. Don't get me wrong, his house if very well guarded. This will be one of the toughest missions we've been on. Nakai, Naruto and I will take care of Utakata while the rest of you take on his guards. Move out team. Chojuro, the now identified leader, spoke as the team took off into the darkness. They were unaware of how challenging the mission was going to be. Naruto turned to Chojuro and smiled at his best friend. He was confident they would both make it through this. Utakata's house. Utakata stood in front of the famed six-tailed slug. He was clearly in his mindscape. Yes, the amber-eyed man asked his lifelong partner. This battle up ahead is not one you can win. The slug explained. This caused Utakata's eyes to widen. What do you mean? When I go all out, with your chakra, I could even defeat Yagura-sama. He was clearly confused. I feel the presence getting nearer. Run. Run while you still can. The Rokubi seemed to be really distressed. What presence? The brunette Jinchuriki asked questionably. Kyuubi. The Kyuubi's container is near. Utakata's eyes snapped open. Can he control the Kyuubi's chakra? He asked. You better hope he can't. The Kyuubi was a merciless demon. He was deceiving, cunning, and had the power to back it up. When I heard he was sealed, I began to fear for the worse. He could affect his container as many ways. Many bad ways. The giant slug explained. What do you suggest I do? Utakata asked as he took a deep breath. I suggest you challenge him to a duel. A simple one-on-one fight. He is not but a boy, and without his Biju's chakra I hope he won't be too much of a challenge. Utakata nodded. It seemed like a good idea. I may actually have to use your chakra. I haven't used it since that day. He came back into the real world to see a group of 3 men standing in front of him. Guards. He yelled, only for nothing to happen. Your guards are currently being handled. Chojuro narrowed his eyes as he unsheathed Haramakare. Utakata narrowed his eyes right back at the younger man. I propose a suggestion. This caught the 3's attention. What? Chojuro asked, not trusting the Jinchuriki. A duel between me and the Kyuubi vessel will decide our fate. Should I win, I will personally behead him. Should he win, I will join your side. Utakata explained. Chojuro looked uncertain as he glanced at his friend. Naruto seemed to be out of it. Drip, drip, drip. Naruto was currently staring down the strongest of the Biju, the Kyuubi no Yuka. This wasn't the first time he had talked to the fox. He did hope that it would be the last, however. What is it you want, Ninjin? The Kyuubi growled, clearly annoyed. The Rokubi container just challenged me to a duel. Naruto explained. And? The fox questioned. I may need to use some of your chakra if he starts to use the Rokubi's chakra. Naruto answered. No. The Kyuubi simply answered. Naruto was gawked. What do you mean no? He asked frantically. I said. No, use your own power. With that, Naruto was sent back into the world of the living. Welcome back. I assume your talk with Kyuubi went well. Utakata asked in a monotone voice. Naruto merely growled. I accept. He answered as he withdrew Kazaiba. Good. With this, Utakata shot a blast of bubbles at the young blonde. Naruto easily dodged them. Naruto, are you sure you can take him on by yourself? Chojuro asked, trying to get some confidence. No, Naruto answered truthfully. But I'll do it regardless. Decapitating air waves. Naruto then fired a blast of invisible air blades out of his sword. Utakata seemed to dance around the blades. This will be easier than I thought. Utakata mocked. Naruto growled and charged in, trying to gain the upper hand. He tried to punch Utakata, only for the fellow Jinchuriki to spin around his fist and backhand Naruto. Naruto took a deep breath and effortlessly deflected the incoming fist. He then landed a solid punch on the brown-haired man's face. Utakata took the punch and tripped Naruto's feet from under him. You're good, but not good enough. Utakata smiled as he caught the incoming blade in between the palms of his hands. Big mistake. The small Wakashi then ignited into flame and burned Utakata's hands. The brown-eyed Jinchuriki growled as the demonic chakra healed the wound. Naruto growled and sent a flaming bullet straight at the man's head. It was deflected with a simple bubble. You're good, Utakata admitted. Truthfully, he wasn't going full out. He was easily a high Jonin level without his Biju's chakra. Part of him didn't want to win the match. Naruto stood across from him, Kazaiba in his right hand, Rukin in his left. He was breathing heavy now. You too. Naruto then charged forward and attempted to stab the older man, only to be roundhouse kicked away. He knew he was outmatched. He also knew he wouldn't give up. The blonde dragged himself off the ground and latched the two blades together. He now had a dual-sided sword. Think the lightsaber of Darth Maul, only one side is smaller than the other and they are swords. Explosive release. Flaming blades. Naruto yelled as he focused chakra into the blade, combining the wind and fire chakra. The result was an enormous explosion of wind and fire racing towards Utakata at high speeds. The jutsu picked up enormous amounts of dust. Chojuro and Nakai were amazed at the sheer power of the jutsu. When the dust cleared, it showed a completely unscathed Utakata. That was a very strong jutsu. However, it wasn't enough to penetrate my bubble barrier. Naruto grinned at this. Utakata frowned, seeing the devilish grin on the other Jinchuriki. His eyes widened when another Naruto erupted out of the ground. The Naruto outstretched his palm and Utakata saw a spiraling sphere of death in his palm. Rasengan. The Naruto yelled as he plunged the jutsu into the older man's chest. It, however, was deflected by the eerie demon chakra that came out of Utakata. No more Mr. Nice Guy. Utakata showed unusual amounts of emotion as his eyes glowed gold. The demonic chakra seemed to form a cloak around him. Naruto could only think one thing as the transformation occurred. The demonic chakra was swirling around the now golden-eyed man. He grinned manically and suddenly disappeared, before reappearing, and he punched Naruto smack in the face. The force behind the blow knocked Naruto back several meters. When he got up, he spit out blood. We shouldn't be fighting. We're both Jinchuriki, we should stick together. Please join our side, Naruto pleaded. Utakata ignored his request and reappeared and roundhouse kicked Naruto again. He's not fighting back, why? Nakai turned towards Chojuro. I have no idea, I hope he's up to something, Chojuro gulped. Fight back. Show me the power of the Kyuubi. The clearly demon-possessed boy yelled as he continued to literally beat the living shit out of Naruto. Naruto pushed to his feet. And no, I won't use Kyuubi, I'll win this with my own power. Naruto panted out. This struck a chord in Utakata's head. He remembered his own deceleration of that sort. Maybe they weren't so different. No, he had to fight. Naruto noticed Utakata stop dead in his tracks at this. He smirked as he ran and delivered a fierce uppercut at the distracted man, sending him flying away. Utakata glared as he brushed himself off. He then sent a torrent of chakra-infused bubbles at the more in-control Jinchuriki. Naruto barely dodged the incoming projectiles and sent a wind blade flying at the older man. Utakata dodged and delivered another demon-enhanced punch at Naruto. Naruto knew that if he didn't come up with something quick, he was going to die. All of a sudden he focused his chakra into a ram seal. Utakata raised his eyebrows and watched to see what was going to happen. The blonde-haired boy focused his hands in that seal for about 30 seconds until massive amounts of chakra swirled around him. Utakata narrowed his eyes. He didn't detect a single ounce of demonic chakra, this was the boy's own power. Naruto then fixed his hands in a very familiar seal. Shadow Clone Jutsu. An enormous puff of smoke later and Naruto was standing with hundreds, no thousands of shadow clones. Utakata's eyes widened considerably. Even in his demon-enhanced form this might prove a bit of a challenge. The main Naruto then put his hands into another set of familiar seals. Ninja Art. Hidden Mist Jutsu. The mist seemed to appear out of thin air and before he knew it, Utakata couldn't see anything, and was surrounded by hundreds of Narutos. He cursed himself for not learning silent killing. Utakata figured he would do alright if he relied on his hated sense of smell and hearing. He dodged a punch from one Naruto, turned around and backhanded another, and shot a large bubble at a group, all in one move. He then caught an overextended leg from another clone and quickly stabbed it with a kunai. The group of Narutos soon literally dog-piled onto the other Jinchuriki. Ha! Not so tough now are you? One of them asked. Utakata glared under the pile. Soon an explosion of demon chakra erupted from the man, dispersing not only the clone, but the mist as well. When the mist cleared, his eyes widened at what he saw. Naruto and a clone were both creating a single, enormous, Rasengan held in both their palms. He then found himself held down by the arms and legs by Naruto's remaining clones. Udama Rasengan. Naruto shouted as he plunged the extremely large ball of swirling death into Utakata's chest. Utakata saw this coming and focused as much demon chakra as physically possible into the torso area. If it was enough he didn't know. The sheer power behind Naruto's attack caused Chojuro and Nakai to look away from the blinding light. The Rasengan and Demon Chakra fought for a few seconds until the Rasengan eventually broke through and sent Utakata flying through the building. Naruto, Chojuro and Nakai followed and saw a bloody and bruised Utakata lying in a pile of his blood. Naruto immediately pulled out Kazeiba. Utakata smiled. I concede, he announced. The demon inside of his was screaming to let it transform and they would smash this pest, but Utakata knew better. He knew what would happen if he transformed. Chojuro was still in shock of the sheer power behind the technique. If Utakata wasn't a Jinchuriki, he'd be dead, not just dead, there would be nothing left of him. Naruto nodded and began to walk towards the other Jinchuriki. All of a sudden yokai exploded out of Utakata again. What? I thought you gave up. Naruto asked as he withdrew Kazeiba again. Help me. The demon, it's taking, Utakata yelled as he grabbed his head in pain. His eyes were flashing from gold to brown uncontrollably. Is there any way to stop this? Naruto turned to Chojuro. Chojuro frowned. I'm not sure, I'll go get back up, you and Nakai hold him off until I get back. Naruto nodded and Nakai grinned. They turned to see Utakata stop squirming and the eyes remained gold. So this is the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Pitiful. How did Utakata lose to scum like you? Rokubi asked as a single tail formed from its chakra cloak. Naruto knew this was bad. He knew that the Kyuubi wouldn't let him use its chakra, so they were on their own. Nakai glared as electricity seemed to dance around him. Naruto grinned at this. Nakai was one of the strongest men on their side. He had the ability to almost completely control the element of lightning, much like Naruto could control fire and wind with his swords. The larger man charged forward at the demon-possessed man, intent on ending it early. He reared back his fist and sent an electrified fist right into the stomach of Utakata. It exploded outwards and sent Utakata flying backwards. "Oh no, you just made me really mad." Rokubi screamed as it disappeared and slammed its fist into Nakai. This electrified the beast, but sent Nakai flying backwards into Naruto. Naruto quickly formed his dual-sided blade and sent another explosive wind fire ball at the demon. It was merely absorbed by the demonic chakra. Naruto growled and attempted to slash the monster, only for it to catch the blade with its mere hand, and toss Naruto over its shoulder. "Where is your strength, Kyuubi? Are you really this weak now?" Ha 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 ha. Inside Naruto a single red eye snapped open. Soon red chakra was leaking out of Naruto, before it started to come out like a fire hydrant. The fox cloak soon surrounded the blonde and two tails formed out of the back. Naruto growled demonically as he disappeared and reappeared behind his opponent. He delivered a vicious swipe with his claws, leaving 4 horizontal slashes on the Rokubi Utakata's chest. The demon screeched in terror and batted Naruto away with its arm. While in mid-air, Naruto turned around and shot his chakra claw at Utakata, lifting him up and sending him sailing away. Nakai watched in awe. This wasn't a mere fight between humans, no, this was on a whole other level. This was a fight between Jinchuriki. The two Jinchuriki traded blows for a couple minutes until Naruto made a mistake in letting his opponent behind him. The Rokubi brought his hand back and prepared to kill Naruto, only for Nakai to appear in the middle at the last minute. Naruto's cloak immediately dispersed as he looked at his fallen friend. Why did you save me?" Naruto croaked out. You are more important to this rebellion than me, that is one reason, the other reason is, I wouldn't want to see you die. Please don't let me die in vain." With these final words Nakai left the land of the living. Naruto's bangs covered his eyes as tears streamed down his cheeks. "Oops, I missed. I meant to kill you. I guess your friend will have to do, for now." The demon mocked. "Shut up." Naruto croaked out. "What was that?" The demon laughed. "I said, shut up." The red chakra returned full force as a single tail appeared, followed by a second, and then a third. This was farther than Naruto had ever gone before, more importantly it was farther than he could control. The demon-possessed blonde roared as he disappeared as swiped the other demon in the torso. He then opened his mouth wide and shot a ball of chakra out towards his enemy, sending it flying and crushing another building. The demon-possessed Naruto ruthlessly continued his assault, finishing with a nasty uppercut. Just then Mei appeared with Chojuro. She saw a sight she had never wanted to see. Naruto had lost control of his demon. "Naruto, stop!" Mei screamed. Her scream fell on deaf ears as Naruto continued to pummel the fellow Jinchuriki into the ground. One of his cloaked ears perked up and he turned to see his mother and his friend standing there with worried looks. He could only think one thing, to kill. He let out a mighty roar as he charged at his mother. Mei widened her eyes in shock as she witnessed her adopted son charge at her with the intent to kill. He reared his claws back and was about to behead her, when he suddenly stopped. Suddenly the chakra cloak disappeared until there was no more. Naruto fell down onto his hands and knees and started to cry. He looked at his hands with rage. "Naruto, I don't blame you, it's not your fault." Mei reassured her son as she rubbed his back. I almost killed you. I don't even know what I was thinking," Naruto sobbed. "It wasn't you, Naruto. It was the Kyuubi that almost killed me." Naruto looked up at his adopted mother's face and noticed her look of seriousness. Their bonding time was cut short, however, as Utakata finished his transformation. Standing there, in all its might, was the Rokubi, the six-tailed slug. The slug was mercilessly destroying the city. I wish one of us had a summoning contract, Chojuro muttered. How do we stop that thing? Naruto asked with a shocked look. Mei sighed. There is only one way. Utakata has to regain control. If he doesn't, the beast will destroy the city. Naruto looked wide-eyed, before a look of certainty appeared on his face. He ran off towards the beast. Mei looked worried and ran after him, only to be stopped by the Anbu guards. Let him go, he has an idea. The Anbu asked as he and his comrades restrained Mei and Chojuro. Naruto continued to run until he was right in front of the demon. He looked up at it and looked it right in the eyes. Utakata, I know you're in there. You're killing innocent people, you can't do this. Stop. Fight the Rokubi. I believe in you. The Rokubi laughed until it found Utakata trying to gain control. Stop this. You are destroying all of Kiri, the innocent people. Utakata grunted as he tried to regain control. This is for our own good. We will rule all of Kiri and show that damned Nine Tails who is in charge. Rokubi argued back as he found himself soon losing the battle. No. This isn't what I want, this is what you want. Utakata argued as he pushed a last time. Fool. You have no idea what it is you want. Rokubi argued back. No. I know what I want. I want to fight with the rebellion, to restore Kiri to its former glory. More than that, I want you to get out of my body. The demon screamed as the chakra faded, revealing a free-falling Utakata. He smiled in the air. He had done it. He'd fought off his demon. Naruto gasped when he found out he couldn't make it in time to catch him. I guess this is the end. Utakata thought as a smile formed on his face. He was surprised when he was all of a sudden caught by Mei. She landed on the ground safely and surveyed the damage. The Rokubi had destroyed all the buildings within the block, and would have continued if not for Naruto stopping it. Soon the citizens of Kiri all were at their window sills, peering out their front doors, and some even came outside to form a group. Mei scanned the crowd for threats, as they were in enemy territory. Soon enough, shocking Naruto, Mei, Utakata, and Chojuro, one man started to clap. This was followed by another, and another, and another until everyone watching was clapping and cheering for the people that saved their city. Mei smiled. Perhaps not everyone on the enemy side is as cold-hearted as Yagura tries to make them. Soon enough, Yagura himself pushed through the crowds. Kill them. Seize them. He yelled as he pointed at the small group of people. No one moved, as everyone was shocked their leader would order the death of their saviors. Yagura yelled at the crowd some more and turned back to see the leaders of the rebellion gone. Damn it. Now they have two Jinchuriki. Yagura muttered to himself as he walked off. People were booing at him everywhere he went. He might finally be losing control of his people. Rebellion camp, the next day. Naruto pulled on his spare black shirt and black pants as he solemnly walked downstairs. Today was the day of Nakai's funeral. Nakai had been a very close friend of Naruto's, training him or looking after him when he was younger. On his way to the funeral he ran into Utakata. Naruto, I am sorry that I killed your friend. Utakata admitted, showing more emotion than usual. It's fine, I know you were under the influence of your demon. It just hurts Yano. Utakata shook his head. I've never had many close friends. None of them ever died. He answered. He didn't mention his one-time master, because he didn't consider him to ever have been a friend anymore. Naruto merely frowned and walked off with the other Jinchuriki. He looked at the graveyard, filled with the corpses of everyone who had died recently. So far a few hundred people have died in the year the war has been going on. Naruto's sensitive ears perked up when he heard footsteps, and lots of them. He immediately began to finger his blade's handle, just waiting for one wrong move to fight. What they saw surprised them. Walking towards them was a group of about 300 men, all dressed in Kiri Chunin or Jonin uniforms. Immediately they thought it was attack and prepared to counter. They then noticed the leader was carrying a large white flag. Is Kiri surrendering? Chojuro asked aloud. No. Yugura would never give up like that. Mei narrowed her eyes, thinking it was a trap. When they got closer she noticed who the leader was and immediately paled. Standing in front of her was the leader of Kiri's Anbu division, Soritsu Yu. To what do we owe the honor? Coming to defile our graves. Mei narrowed her eyes and prepared to attack. No. We have come to join your forces. After seeing the way you protected Kiri, all of us realized how much better it would be without Yugura. You answered. Mei narrowed her eyes further. How can we trust you? She asked. Yu took a breath. At 4 o'clock next Thursday Yugura is planning a full-scale invasion on your camp. He was planning to eliminate you guys once and for all. Obviously he counted on us to back him up. He was wrong. I have with me 300 of Kiri's finest men. Jonin, Chunin and Anbu. Yu clarified. Mei widened her eyes. If what he was saying is true, Yugura's forces must be depleted to practically half of what they used to be at the beginning of the war. They also lost one of their Jinchuriki. Welcome aboard. Mei shook hands with the scarred man. She looked him over one last time. He had brown hair with a beard-mustache combo. He wore a green, camouflaged bandana on his forehead and had on a classic gray Kiri Jonin vest. He wore black pants and had a large scythe on his back. The most prominent feature was the lone scar running down the right side of his face. It was said he gained that scar from the yellow flash himself. Good to be on here. Yu shook her hand back. Woods surrounding Kiri. Yugura was standing in the middle of a clearing, gazing at the stars. He didn't know why he was here. Frankly, he didn't remember anything that had happened in the last few years. He looked at his reflection in the water. The last thing I remember was being confronted by the previous Mizukage and then, nothing. He sighed and wondered why he was wearing the Mizukage robes. He all of a sudden whipped his head around as he felt another presence appear. Who's there? He called out as he withdrew a kunai. He saw a single man standing in the shadows. All he could make out was the man was wearing a black cloak. He gasped when he saw the man's dull gray eyes. They were surrounded by a ripple-like effect of rings. Who are you? He questioned as he directed all his ki at the other man. I've wanted to meet you for a long time, Yugura. The man spoke in a monotone voice. Yugura growled. How do you know my name? He sputtered out. I know a lot of things. The man simply answered. To answer your previous question, you can call me Pain. Pain? What kind of name is that? Yugura asked. The man simply laughed. It is the name of a god. He answered. You think you're a god? Yugura sneered. You're nothing but a lunatic. Pain narrowed his eyes. Yugura grew sick of this and charged forward at speeds most people wouldn't be able to follow. Pain, however, wasn't most people. He merely held out his arm. Shinra Tensai. Pain stated as a blast of invisible energy knocked Yugura back and sent him flying. Yugura wiped the blood out of his mouth and started to ooze his demonic chakra. All of a sudden 5 other men, who all had the same eyes as Pain appeared. What is this? Yugura growled as he unleashed even more demonic chakra, soon taking the shape of a turtle. You're no longer useful for us. Pain declared as he pointed his hand at the now demon-possessed Jinchuriki. Shinra Tensai. A tremendous blast of the same energy sent the Mizukage hurling into the ocean, dead. Pain smirked as the water started to bubble, and soon enough he 3-tailed turtle emerged in all its glory. Pain merely sighed and sent another Shinra Tensai at the turtle, sending it plunging into the ocean. It was clear that Yugura was no more. The Sanbi was free again, although it wasn't nearly as powerful as it could be, due to its lacking intelligence. Pain disappeared into the shadows, not to be seen for some time. Rebellion camp. Are you serious? Mei shouted at Yu. Yu merely nodded. Yes. Yugura is nowhere to be found. We assume he either fled, or is dead. The ex-Anbu captain confirmed. Mei raised her eyebrows. Who could have killed Yugura without us knowing? Mei wondered. I don't know, and I don't like it. You admitted. Naruto then piped in his own 2 cents. Does this mean the war is over? He asked. Actually, I'm not sure, there will still be some Yagura supporters, but with our numbers we should be able to take care of them fairly easily. I'd say within the year we should be in control of Kiri. Mei reasoned with a smile. Naruto grinned too. Even the ever-stoic Yu let out a small smile. Mei then turned towards Naruto. I think it's time we start your elemental training. Naruto grinned at this. This was going to be fun. Akatsuki Base. Pain stood in his room with Conan. He sighed as he looked out the window. What is it? Conan asked. It's Madara. I have a feeling that he is just using us for his own gain. I do not like being used. Pain admitted. I know what you mean, Nagato. But none of us are strong enough to kill him, so we have to listen to him. Nagato shook his head. You're wrong. I see he has never recovered from his fight with Hashirama. It would be possible to kill him, it would just be too much of a hassle, and too many loses on our side. For now we will continue to work with him. Pain's Rinnegan seemed to glow as he finished this statement. Kurigakure, 1 year later. It has been a year since the day that Yagura was announced dead. Today was finally it. Today Mei Terumi was going to be announced the Godime Mizukage. It took the better part of the last year to weed out the Yagura supporters and to fully take over Mist, but they had found that the Kiri population wasn't really against them coming into charge. Mei stood atop the Mizukage tower, clad in her new yellow and white uniform. She wore the water shadow hat with pride. Mei turned to her right to see her son leaning against a wall, polishing his blades. To her left, Chojuro and Ao were talking and Utakata was leaning against the wall with his eyes closed. She mentally prepared herself before she pushed open the door and stood upon the balcony, overlooking all of Kiri who had gathered in the town square. The audience immediately quieted down at the sight of their new Mizukage. Almost all of them were happy about the change. The mist had seemingly cleared for the glorious occasion. Greetings people of Kiri, citizens and ninja alike. I come before you today to humbly announce my acceptance of the title Godime Mizukage. I promise to fulfill my duties to the best of my ability and to lead Mist to prosperity. No longer will Academy students have to kill in cold blood, no longer will our streets be littered with war, and no longer will those with bloodlines be disgraced. That's right, I, Terumi Mei, hold not one, but 2 bloodlines. This caused the crowd to gasp. I have the ability to combine my earth and fire chakra to make lava release, and I can combine my fire and water to make steam release. My goal is to make Kiri a formidable member of the 5 great shinobi villages once again. I bid you all farewell and I hope you will all serve your country to the best of your ability. Long live Kiri! Long live Kiri! The crowd shouted back as they started to roar with applause. Mei smiled as she walked back into the tower. She then turned her attention onto the men currently in the room, more specifically her adopted son. Terumi Naruto, due to your performance in the war, as well as your spotless mission completion record, I hereby offer you the position of Jonin. Mei offered with no small amount of pride in her voice. Naruto's eyes widened considerably. I accept, he said as he caught the incoming flak jacket. It was a classic Kiri Jonin jacket, being a pale gray in color. Congratulations. You are the youngest person in the history of Kiri to be promoted to Jonin, at 12 years old. I can't tell you how proud I am of you. Mei praised as Naruto blushed and rubbed the back of his head. He turned to Utakata and smiled at his friend. Over the course of the last year, Naruto and Utakata have become close friends. Despite their age difference, they found they both had a lot in common. Naruto even learned Utakata's painful secret. The hard way. Flashback. Sweat rolled down the bare back of Terumi Naruto as he stood, panting, in the middle of the training dojo. On the other side of the dojo stood an equally exhausted Utakata. They'd been training a lot together in the recent months. He, I almost got you. Do you think you could help me with my demon chakra control sometime, like Yano, train me? This apparently struck a chord in Utakata's head as he suddenly stiffed up. What's wrong? Naruto asked, clearly not knowing what he did wrong. I don't do well with training anybody else, Utakata admitted. Naruto frowned. Why not? The blonde Jinchuriki asked. Utakata shook his head. I don't like to talk about it. He firmly stated. Naruto didn't get the idea. Come on. It will make you feel better to tell me about it. Naruto pestered. Utakata sighed as he took a deep breath. My master, Harusame, a long time ago, I thought he really cared about me. He trained me to not have to rely on the Rokubi's chakra. He actually made me feel like I was more than a demon. He eventually betrayed me, however. I found out he was only using me for the 6 tails, Utakata spat in disgust. Naruto looked angry as well. Someone who would stoop that low didn't deserve to be respected. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Naruto stated glumly. It's fine. You didn't know. Utakata answered as he walked away, obviously needing some time to himself. Flashback end. Mei then turned her attention to Ao. Ao, I need you and you to personally deliver a request of alliance to Kumo. Mei asked. Ao raised an eyebrow. Any reason why Kumo? He asked. Yes. They are one of the major strengths, along with Konoha and Iowa, and if we are to make a name for ourselves again, we will need strengths. Konoha is out for now, because when we went to them for help with our rebellion, they turned their backs on us. Iowa is obviously out because if they were to find out about Naruto's relation they would be out for his head. We can possibly ally ourselves with other countries in the future, I just think we should start with Kumo. Mei explained. Try and be respectful, the Raikage is an irritable man and has the power to back it up. Ao nodded and disappeared, off to find you. Mei then turned her attention to Naruto and Chojuro. Naruto, you and Chojuro we be going a double-part mission. The first part of the mission is to eliminate Gato of the shipping industry, or at least end his rule over Wave. Wave is an important shipping country for us, and we would like to be in their favor. The second, however, is more important to me personally. Mei trailed off at that point. And what is that? Naruto asked. Chojuro looked up to listen as well. You are to retrieve Momochi Zabuza and offer him a place back in the Kiri Shinobi forces. The only reason he is gone was that he attempted a coup d'état ahead on his own against Yagura. Now that Yagura is gone, we could use him again. According to our information, Zabuza is working for Gato to eliminate the bridge builder, who is currently trying to build a bridge to free Wave of Gato's tyranny. The bridge builder apparently has at least a team of Konoha nin. I assume they wouldn't be higher than Chunin rank, knowing how poor Wave is right now. If Zabuza refuses on the professional level, tell him Terumi Mei would like to talk to him, as a friend. Mei sounded dead serious at this, so Chojuro and Naruto nodded and disappeared in a classic Kiri body flicker. Mei sighed and looked up into the sky. Zabuza had been a close friend of hers, being one of the few to know of her bloodline. Konoha. PFF'd. These brats are supposed to protect me. As if. They look like a batch of diaper fillers, especially the emo one. Tazuna snorted. This caused said emo to growl in annoyance. It wasn't enough that he was stuck with his pink-haired banshee of a fangirl, and a constant annoyance named Sai. Throw a chronically late sensei, who seemed to be too serious for his own good, and a drunken client and you get one hell of a mission for Uchiha Sasuke. Kakashi looked seriously at the bridge keeper. Gone was the laid-back Kakashi. Ever since Naruto left, the copy nin had been all business. He hadn't failed a single mission since the blonde-haired heir to the Yondaime left. He was still late to everything, however. He now had one more name to mourn at the memorial stone. He remembered the lies carved into the stone. Uzumaki Naruto. Unclaimed orphan. Most likely from Kyuubi attack. Status. Civilian deceased. Age. 5. Cause of death. Unknown. Date of birth. October 10th. No matter what anybody said, Kakashi still believed Naruto was alive out there. He didn't know where, but he hoped the blonde-haired boy was still alive. He snapped from his musing when he heard the bridge builder. I assure you, a mere C-class mission is more than enough for my team to handle. Also if they, for some reason, couldn't I am a Jonin. Kakashi explained. Tazuna started to sweat. Kakashi raised his one visible eyebrow, but eventually passed it off as too much liquor. Team, meet at the main gate in 45 minutes, don't be late. Kakashi instructed as he disappeared. The team sweat dropped at their sensei making sure they weren't late. As if he could talk about lateness. Kakashi was blissfully unaware of the impact this mission would have on his life. Naruto and Chojuro traveled at high speeds through the trees leading to Wave. They were on their way to find the infamous Momochi Zabuza, the demon of the mist. Naruto smirked at the nickname. He'd heard the tale of Zabuza. Personally, he wasn't looking forward to meeting a man who had slaughtered his entire graduating class, but he was no fool and knew how powerful the man was. Chojuro. Naruto spoke up through the wishing noise of tree hopping. Yeah, the older man looked to his blonde partner. This Zabuza, what's he like? I heard he was a real nutcase. Naruto laughed. Chojuro smirked. Yeah, Zabuza-senpai could kind of be a nutcase. He enjoyed killing a little too much for my tastes, but then again he did grow up in the prime of the bloody mist. He was strong-willed and believed that shinobi were nothing more than tools. He also dreamed of becoming the Mizukage, going as far as attempting a coup d'état to try and overthrow Yagura some years back. He specializes in water jutsu, kenjutsu, and silent killing. His sword is called the Kubikiri Houcho, literally the decapitating blade. It is about 6 or 7 feet long and he wields it with extreme ease. Out of all the members of the 7 swordsmen, he was definitely the most bloodthirsty, although now that I think about it Kisame-senpai was as well. Chojuro trailed off with a smile, obviously remembering good times. Naruto nodded. Do you think he'll come back willingly? Naruto asked seriously. I'm not sure, was all Chojuro said in return. They continued hopping through the trees until they arrived at a large body of water with an enormous bridge. Naruto looked wide-eyed. May had told him how big the bridge was, but he was apparently vastly underestimating its size. He felt a large chakra output from out ahead. Feels like someone is using a powerful jutsu. Naruto turned to his teammate, who nodded his head, having come to the same conclusion. Let's go check it out. Chojuro offered as the two took off at breakneck speeds through the foliage. They arrived in time to see Zabuza get blasted back by a large jutsu, the Great Waterfall Jutsu to be exact. He was sent crashing into a tree. They turned to see a sight that made their eyes widen in shock. The Sharingan Kakashi was fighting with Zabuza. He was a ninja legend throughout the world, being one of the youngest ninja to be promoted to Jonin, excluding Naruto himself and Uchiha Itachi. They saw that Kakashi was apparently leading a team of young genin. There was a raven-haired boy with a blue shirt and white shorts and white arm warmers. He has the Uchiha fan on his back. He was obviously the Uchiha heir, the last of the clan. Next to him stood a young pink-haired girl with a red battle dress and a white circle on the back. She wore classic blue ninja sandals and had biker shorts underneath her dress. The third man stood out like the rakeage in an orphanage. He was extremely pale. Naruto went as far to refer him as being white to the full degree. He had a black shirt that went down to his abdomen and matching black pants. He also had a small blade, most likely a tanto, on his back. They turned in time to see Kakashi about to deal the final blow to Zabuza. Naruto was about to interfere when he saw 3 Senbon fly through the air and pierce Zabuza in the neck. A false death technique. I thought those were used in the Hunter division, Naruto thought. Ao had long since showed him what he could do with his needles. Naruto shivered at the thought. He noticed a man dressed in a Kiri Hunter uniform appeared next to Zabuza. Thank you for weakening him. I am a Hunter Nin of Kiri sent to kill Zabuza. You've saved me a lot of trouble. I will be going now. The man started but was cut off as a blonde-haired man appeared in front of him, followed by a dark-haired man dressed similar to Zabuza. He started sweating when he noticed the Kiri headbands. He'd have to talk his way out of this one. What is the meaning of impersonating a hunter nin of Kiri? Naruto accused as he fingered Rukin. Chojuro was also slowly moving his hand toward his respective blade. I'm sorry, I have no idea what you are talking about. I was sent on a special mission of the Yondaime Mizukages to personally kill Zabuza. It's no wonder you don't know about it, as it was top secret. The imposter lied. Naruto smirked. Chojuro beat him to it. That's strange because it just so happens that the Yondaime Mizukage is dead. I also find it strange the Mizukage would order Zabuza's death when we were sent to negotiate with him. Chojuro smirked, knowing he had the man caught. Haku's eyes widened in shock. The Yondaime was dead. This was news to him. Apparently it was also news to Kakashi, as his one visible eye widened in shock again. He had long since replaced his headband over his eye. Haku immediately grabbed Zabuza and shusined away. Chojuro went to follow, only to be stopped by his younger companion. Don't worry, he'll be back. Remember, his mission is to kill the bridge builder. Naruto reasoned. Chojuro nodded. Not that I don't appreciate your timely intervention. Kakashi broke into their conversation, but why are you here? Chojuro. Naruto turned towards him. Kakashi glanced at Chojuro, taking in his appearance and immediately recognizing him as one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. He glanced at the young boy, who looked no older than his team but wore the Kiri Jonin uniform. He noticed the shade of blonde, not unlike that of his late sensei. He then looked into his eyes. He immediately widened his eye in shock before he looked at the final touch. 3 parallel whisker marks adorned the otherwise normal face. We were sent on personal business regarding Zabuza and Mist. I can't reveal any more to you than that, I am afraid. Chojuro answered. Naruto noticed the look Kakashi gave him, and frankly it made him feel uncomfortable. What are you staring at? Naruto questioned. Naruto. Is that really you? Kakashi asked, hoping with all his heart his suspicions were correct. Naruto immediately looked shocked. How do you know my name? He questioned. I'm Hatake Kakashi. Your father was my sensei. I also used to look after you when you were a kid. Kakashi I smiled. Naruto looked shocked before a look of realization traced itself onto his face. Dog-san? Naruto asked. Kakashi nodded. Naruto remembered the dog-masked Anbu who had saved his life on many occasions. Naruto, Kakashi started, only to be cut off by Chojuro. Don't even think about asking him to come back to Konoha. The usually nervous man tried his best to sound intimidating. Kakashi looked solemnly at Naruto. I wouldn't ask something like that. I can tell you're a lot happier than you ever could have been in Konoha. I can also tell that just as Konoha is my home and I'd do anything to protect it, the same is true for you and Mist. Naruto nodded at the scarecrow's cryptic words. Sasuke looked strangely at the blonde man, who couldn't be much older than he was. He held an aura of power and authority over him. Sasuke could tell that he'd earned the rank of Jonin. Tazuna decided to speak up. How do we know they aren't just backup for Zabuza? The old man looked suspiciously. Tazuna, I presume? Chojuro asked. The older man nodded. Chojuro approached the man and gave him a note. This is from Mizukage-sama. Tazuna read the note carefully before a look of pure joy enveloped his face. This is great. Why don't you stay with me and my family? We have plenty of room, as long as it's okay with the Konoha nin. Tazuna cheered as he looked at Kakashi. He knew he was on a short leash with Konoha after he lied about the mission rank. Of course that's fine with us. Kakashi confirmed. Tazuna looked back to the Mist duo, who were currently burning the note with a small fire jutsu. That would be fine, Tazuna-san. Naruto nodded. Years of war had shaped the energetic youth to become a real man, a real shinobi. He still knew how to goof off and have fun when he was off duty, but on missions he was strictly business. Okay, my house is right this way. Tazuna grinned as he suddenly felt a lot more confident. Not only did he have a team from Konoha, but he even had a team of Jonin from Kiri to support him, and not only that but they would do their best to rid Wave of Gato as well. Tazuna didn't think he'd been this happy or confident since Gato appeared in Wave. He turned to see Kakashi fall over, clearly unconscious. Before he hit the ground he was caught by Naruto. Sasuke's eyes widened. I didn't even see him move, he's fast. Even faster than Kakashi-sensei. Is this the difference between myself and a Jonin? Sasuke thought gloomily. Sakura was still in awe that Kiri had appeared and even more so that Kakashi-sensei knew one of the Jonin. I'll carry Kakashi. Naruto confirmed as he hoisted the older man onto his shoulders. Tazuna's house. The group of 7 soon arrived at an average-looking house, much better off than most of the houses they had seen walking here. Tazuna soon knocked on the door and they were greeted by a good-looking woman who appeared to be in her early 30s. "Tu-san, I'm so glad you're okay." Tsunami shouted as she hugged her father. "Of course I'm okay. Tsunami, I'd like to introduce you to the ninja who helped me get here safely." Tazuna grinned as her pointed to the group. Tsunami smiled. "Hello, my name is Tsunami. I'm glad to meet you. Thank you so much for agreeing to help my Tu-san. You're a great help to all of Wave." Tsunami greeted. "My name is Uchiha Sasuke." Sasuke answered, looking bored. "I'm Haruno Sakura. Nice to meet you, Tsunami-san." Sakura greeted enthusiastically. "I'm Sai." The pale man flashed a smile that Naruto could tell was fake. "Our sensei is Hitaki Kakashi, but he is currently unconscious." Tsunami nodded and turned to the Mist Nin. "My name is Chojuro of the Mist. This is my partner, Terumi Naruto." Chojuro greeted. "It's good to meet you, Tsunami-san." Naruto greeted. Tsunami nodded back to them as she ushered them in and brought Kakashi to a futon to sleep on. The rest of the ninja soon followed suit and went to bed as well. Road to Kumogakure. Ao and Yu traveled at blinding speeds through the hills of Kumo. They could see the mountains in the distance, signaling they were getting close. It had taken a week on a boat to travel to Lightning Country. Ao smirked. Yu turned to him. "Have you ever met the Raikage?" Yu asked towards the man. "No. Why?" Ao responded. "Do your best to not irritate him. He is an easily angered man. He will also be a little different looking." Yu nervously instructed. "He can't be that bad," Ao reasoned. Yu chuckled as they approached the main gates of Kumo. The village was built on mountains, with the Raikage living on the tallest mountain. They were stopped by the guards of Kumo. "Halt. State your business inside of Kumogakure." The guard asked in perfect rhythm. Yu nodded and took out his papers and handed them to the guards. The right guard skimmed over the papers and nodded. "Welcome to Kumo, Kiri-san. The Raikage has been expecting you." Yu nodded and he and Ao continued on into the village, awed by the scenery. They noticed people there seemed to use katanas. Kiri had always been known as the top village of swordsmen, although Kumo wasn't too far behind. They continued towards the Raikage's tower when they were stopped by a large dark-skinned man. He had 7 swords on his back. He wore a long white shirt with a brown belt and black pants. He also had a tattoo of an ox horn on his right cheek and a tattoo on his shoulder that said iron. He had a white beard, sunglasses and a white Kumo headband. He had massive biceps and looked to be made of muscle. "Hey Kiri-nin, it's time for Kurabi to lead the way. The Raikage has been expecting you and it is my duty to instruct the new." The large man, cleverly, rhymed his words. "Idiot." A blonde girl yelled as she shoved him aside. "Do you have to talk like that to our guests?" She scolded the older man. "Ah Yugito, you know that my raps are the best and are much better than taking a CRA." Kurabi started only to get socked in the face courtesy of Yugito. "Don't you dare finish that sentence in front of our guests," she yelled. Kurabi grumbled to himself about angry cats. "Sorry about him. My name is Ni Yugito and this is Kurabi, the brother of the Raikage. We have been sent here to escort you to Raikage-sama's office. If you would follow me." Yugito instructed and before waiting for an answer she walked off, followed by Kurabi. They 4 soon arrived at the Raikage's announcement. Greetings Kiri Nin. It is a pleasure to meet with you. The Raikage informed the two Kiri Nin. Ao and Yu bowed their heads. Thank you for meeting with us Raikage-sama. They said in union. The Raikage nodded. I understand that there is a new leader of Mist, a Godime. The Yondaime Raikage inquired. Ao nodded. Yes. Terumi Mei has recently been named the Godime Mizukage. She led us in the rebellion and she is one of Kiri's strongest shinobi. We have come here to propose an alliance in the name of Kiri and Godime Mizukage Terumi Mei. Ao responded. I see. Well, seeing as we are both rather excluded from the rest of the 5 countries, and I have nothing against Kiri in general, I see no problem in this. Do you have any other allies at this time? The Raikage asked. Not yet, seeing as how we have only now become active once again. Do you agree to meet with Mizukage-sama? Yu asked. The Raikage nodded. Indeed. Tell her I will be there in 3 weeks' time, and I will bring 2 escorts. I bid you farewell Ao and Yu of Kiri. The 2 nin bowed to the larger man and disappeared in a classic Kiri body flicker. The Raikage let a small smile grace his face as he went back to work. Wave. The 4 Konoha nin stood next to Kakashi's bed while Naruto and Chojuro stood leaning against the walls to the side. Zabuza will be back. As of right now you guys aren't near strong enough to take him, or his partner for that matter, on. The next week will be solely devoted to you training. For the most part we won't be interacting with the Kiri nin. They have their own mission to attend to. Our mission is to protect Tazuna. Follow me and we will begin your training. With this the 4 Konoha nin left the house. Now Naruto turned to Chojuro. So did you track the phony hunter? Naruto questioned. Yes, I know where Zabuza's base is. Let's go. Remember. We are only to ask him, no force is necessary. However, we will have to kill Gato. Chojuro instructed. Naruto nodded and they disappeared in bursts of speed. Zabuza's base. I can't believe you got beat by 3 kids in a single Jonin. I thought you said you could handle this. Gato growled, trying his best to sound intimidating. Unfortunately for him, he was trying to scare a seasoned killer. Zabuza growled back, unleashing a small bit of ki. We'll get him next time. I wasn't prepared to fight Kakashi of the Sharingan. Next time I will be. Zabuza bluntly stated. Gato apparently wasn't happy. Let's just see what you hide under your mask, O demon of the mist. Gato mocked as he reached for Zabuza's bandages, only for Haku to intercept his arm and snap it. OWCH. That hurt you little bitch. Gato growled at the girl. Yes, I am making Haku a girl. Haku narrowed her eyes. I will not let you touch Zabuza-sama with your filthy hands. Leave now. Haku glared daggers at the short man. 2 of Gato's guards flashed their swords, obviously trying to scare the 2 seasoned shinobi. Haku disappeared in a burst of speed and was suddenly holding Senbon at each of the guards' necks. Leave. Now. Or I may not be able to save you from Haku. Zabuza growled. Gato nodded his head in motion for the 2 guards to leave with him. Next time you better not fail me. Gato yelled as he left the room. Zabuza immediately turned to see Naruto and Chojuro standing in the far corner of the room. Haku's eyes widened in shock. She hadn't even sensed them arrive. What do you want, Chojuro? Zabuza asked. Haku tensed, ready for battle. I merely wish to extend an invitation. The Mizukage would like you back to join our forces. Chojuro explained. Zabuza narrowed his eyes. There is no way I'm going back to serve Yagura. Forget it. Zabuza merely stated. Naruto smirked. That's good. As we told your partners, Yagura is dead. We have appointed a new Mizukage. Naruto explained. Zabuza's eyes widened. Who'd they get to replace him? Kisame. The eyebrow-less man asked. Chojuro shook his head. No. Kisame left the village shortly after you. He was made a missing nin after he assassinated 2 high-ranking officials. The swordsman explained. Zabuza closed his eyes in thought. I refuse. The next time I come back to that place will be when I'm ready to take my place as ruler over Mist. Naruto and Chojuro looked at each other solemnly. I understand. Chojuro sighed. Zabuza raised an eyebrow. Why didn't you kill Gato when you had the chance? He asked. Because as long as Gato is here, you will remain as well. If he were dead, there would be nothing keeping you here. We will kill Gato in good time. Chojuro explained. Zabuza laughed. I told you I'm not coming back. He stated with venom in his voice. I understand. I would merely like to pass a message from the current Mizukage. Terumi May would like to talk with you, as friends. With this, the two Kiri Nin disappeared in bursts of speed, leaving Zabuza to his musing. May. She's still alive. It's been so long since I've seen her. Zabuza looked up to Haku in thought. How would you feel about going back to Kiri? He asked seriously. I will do whatever it is you think is best, Zabuza-sama. Haku answered in her small voice. Zabuza shook his head. Every day he wondered if he was doing what was best. Woods outside of Tazuna's house. Naruto was deep in the woods, surrounded by hundreds of shadow clones. They were all working on perfecting his first original technique. He had stumbled upon the idea when he was working on combining his wind affinity with the Rasengan. So far he had hit a dead end in that area, but some good had come from it. He was almost done with creating his first and only original jutsu. This jutsu would rival the copy nin's Reikiri in sheer strength, but would have the explosive power of not only wind, but fire as well. Naruto grinned as his clones worked on it. He himself was busy reading on the Hiroshin. His body still wasn't developed enough to allow him to use the Hiroshin, or risk damaging his body's molecular structure. Despite popular belief, the Hiroshin wasn't just the user summoning himself to the point of the kunai at light speed. No, it was much more complicated than that. Human bodies weren't made to be summoned, unlike the bodies of summon animals. The Hiroshin broke down the user's body into smaller molecular structures and transported the smaller structures through the summon hole to the point of the kunai seal. The tricky part was getting the molecules arranged back in the original order. This was why you needed to be full grown to use Hiroshin, or risk something going wrong and ruining your developing body's atomic structure, rendering irreparable damage in the future. Naruto knew he'd have to wait until he was 15 or 16 until he could finally start to learn the Hiroshin. He figured in the time being he would merely train himself on other things such as ninjutsu, kenjutsu, taijutsu, and work on his speed. Naruto took a deep breath of the fresh air as he continued to read his scroll. Tazuna's house. The 9 people were currently gathered around the dinner table, enjoying one of Tsunami's home-cooked meals. Naruto had to admit the meal was delicious, especially when he had a mom whose cooking was always disgusting. Not that he'd ever tell her that, or she would probably maim him. It's been exactly a week since we last faced Zabuza. I'd expect him to show up anytime within the next couple days. Team 7, we will guard the bridge keeper tomorrow. Naruto, I assume you two are coming as well? Kakashi questioned. Naruto nodded. Yes. If Zabuza is there, we will be there as well. I will also leave a few shadow clones back at the house, just in case Gato tries anything. Naruto confirmed. Chojuro nodded, having thought Naruto's idea was brilliant. The conversation was interrupted by Inari's sudden outburst. Why do you try so hard? Gato is just going to kill you. You're no heroes, why don't you just go back to where you came from? Inari shouted. Sasuke growled and was about to argue when Naruto spoke up. In the shinobi world, heroes don't exist. Everything is a matter of perspective. I've killed people, I've stained my hands in blood far more times than I'd like. I've even killed people who honestly didn't deserve to die. I could be considered evil. The important thing was that I fought for what I believed in, I stood up for my country and did everything I did, bad or good, knowing it would make a difference in the future. I can be considered a murderer, yet the people I killed would have done the same thing to me if given the chance. You truly are a fool. You talk like you know pain, like you stand by your country. Yet you don't. You're too afraid to stand up against a fat midget with a large checkbook. In this world I learned one thing really fast. If you don't stand up for yourself, you're going to die. Naruto finished as he closed his eyes in thought. Kakashi nodded his head. Growing up in a time of war was hard. He himself grew up in the Third Great Shinobi War and was a recently promoted Jonin. To have been fighting since you were 10, he didn't know if he could handle it. Sasuke widened his eyes in shock. This boy, no older than himself, talked as if he had killed for years, when Sasuke himself hadn't bloodied himself once. Sakura was also thinking things such as this, while Sai merely shook his head in thought. Inari was on the verge of tears. Remember this. Only when someone, shinobi or not, fights for another will they experience real strength. Only when you are willing to put everything on the lines, even your life, to protect someone or something you believe in will you truly be strong. With these last cryptic words, Naruto stood up and excused himself. Inari's eyes looked like dinner plates. Sasuke narrowed his eyes. That's not true. The only way to gain power is hatred. If that's true, how is this boy, no older than me, already a Jonin? Sasuke shook his head before excusing himself. Kakashi smiled a true, genuine smile at this. It looked like Naruto had indeed inherited the will of fire. Kakashi just wished he could right the wrongs of the past. Kurigakure no Sato. Mei smiled down at the piece of paper she had in her hand. She knew that this paper alone would have an amazing impact on the world. Her sharp eyes snapped up as Ao and Yu entered the room. What is the news? Mei asked. It seems as thought the Raikage would like to meet with you in 3 weeks' time. He seemed for open to the idea of an alliance. Ao answered. Mei nodded and noted that Ao looked like he wanted to say something. What is it, Ao? Mei asked suspiciously. I happen to have my Byakugan activated in Kumo. I noticed that the cloud has 2 Jinchuriki of their own. He stated. Mei nodded, having already known this. Yes, the Hachibi and the Nibi. I already knew this. The auburn-haired woman answered. Ao smiled and unconsciously glanced at the piece of paper. What is this? He asked. Mei grinned. This, my friend, is only the single most important paper of my life. She stated. Ao looked confused. What do you mean? He asked. This paper clearly states that I, Godime Mizukage Terumi Mei, hereby allow Terumi Naruto, or better yet Namikaze Naruto, the permission to re-establish the Namikaze clan here in Kiri. Of course I will need his signature as well. Mei smirked. Ao's jaw nearly hit the floor. Yu looked concerned. Are you sure that's a good idea? The yellow flash had a lot of enemies all over the world. Iwa, for certain, would pay nicely for the son of Konoha's 4th Hokage, seeing as he did single-handedly wipe out 1/3 of Iwa's forces. Yu voiced his concerns. Mei nodded. I thought over this already. Naruto is a strong man, being one of our top Jonins is such a young age. It would also do Kiri wonders to have the power of the Namikaze clan to add to its military force. Naruto will also be the clan head of the Namikaze. I will, of course, recreate the Terumi clan and Naruto will recreate the Namikaze, seeing as how he doesn't have my bloodline limits. Mei explained. Yu nodded. He knew that with the power of the Namikaze clan, Kiri would benefit enormously. The Namikazes had been a bloodline-less clan, relying on their genius and physical abilities to earn them a spot as one of the most prestigious clans. It's clear that the genius of the Namikaze has passed on to Naruto as well. Mei finished. Ao nodded. He knew that Naruto would make them all proud one day. Zabuza's hideout. Zabuza sighed as he looked into space. Mei, it's been so long, I wonder how you are, Zabuza thought. He and the auburn-haired Mizukage had briefly dated before Zabuza defected. They hadn't gone out long, only for about 2 months before Zabuza decided to stage his plan for the coup. Of course it hadn't worked, but he was deep down happy that Mei's had. A part of Zabuza wanted nothing more than to claim Mist as his own, while another, deeper part of him wanted to go back and talk to Mei. He knew she would probably let him go if he chose not to stay, so he couldn't use that excuse. Haku, I don't know what to do. There is a possibility that if we said no, the Mist Nin would leave. I trust May's word and everything, but they could be lying. If that is true, there is no way we can take on 3 Jonin at the same time. Especially if Gato is indeed going to betray us, Zabuza trailed off. I will follow you to the end, Zabuza-sama. Haku firmly stated. Zabuza looked over at the other ninja apathetically. Inwardly he cringed. Have I really hardened you to the point where you can't even speak your actual wishes? Have my wishes become your wishes? Zabuza wondered but quickly threw that thought out. It wouldn't do for the demon of the mist to be seen as a softie. The 6 ninja were just about ready to leave for the bridge. They just finished a delicious meal, courtesy of Tsunami, and were ready for anything. Naruto and Chojuro mentally prepared themselves for whatever decision Zabuza was going to make. If he said no, they would respect that decision and inform him that the Kiri hunters would resume their chase within the week. If he said yes, Naruto and Chojuro would personally escort him back to Mist, where he would be reinstated as a Jonin. They both knew that they would have to kill Gato either way. Shadow Clone Jutsu, Naruto whispered under his breath as 3 clones appeared next to him. You guys watch the house. We should be back by sunset. Naruto ordered as the clones nodded. The blonde then nodded towards Kakashi as the group of 6 ninja and 1 civilian started off at a slow pace towards the bridge. Naruto gazed down at his unscathed arm. His own healing abilities still astounded him. Last night his arm had been a mess of 2nd and 1st degree burns, but today there wasn't a scratch on there. Naruto could sense a steady chakra output, not unlike the feeling of the hidden mist jutsu. He immediately turned to Chojuro, who nodded back, already feeling it himself. They understood that Kakashi wouldn't have felt it because he wasn't used to the jutsu like they were. They group soon arrived to see the bridge covered in a thick mist. The mist cleared to reveal all of Tezuna's workers lying unconscious. Kakashi immediately whipped out a kunai and stood defensively in front of Tezuna. Come out. I know you're there, Zabuza. Kakashi announced. 2 silhouettes began to appear out of the mist until Zabuza and the hunter nin were standing in front of the group. Team. Defensive position. Kakashi yelled. The 3 genin immediately surrounded the bridge builder, kunai drawn and ready for battle. Zabuza started to lightly chuckle. He turned to the 2 mist nin. Hello, Chojuro. Fancy meeting you here. The demon of the mist chuckled. Chojuro gazed right back into his eyes, unflinching. Have you made a decision? The unusually bold man asked. Yes. I will come back, on one condition. Prove to me that you can best me in a fight. Zabuza smirked. He was confident he could defeat Chojuro. The demon of the mist knew what day it was. Chojuro all of a sudden paled. He knew that he couldn't fight Zabuza. The shy man was not very confident in his abilities, but he knew was a strong fighter. He also believed he could beat Zabuza on a normal day. Chojuro glanced wearily back at his blade. On the 3rd day of every month, Haramakare would lose its abilities. It was a strange thing, but all the swords of the 7 swordsmen, the ones with abilities of course, would lose their abilities one day every month to recharge. Unfortunately for Chojuro, Zabuza knew today was Haramakare's day. You know I'm no match for you today, Chojuro sighed. His eyes immediately widened as an idea dawned on him. A devilish smirk formed on the young man's face. But Naruto just might be. Chojuro voiced his thoughts. Naruto widened his eyes in shock before a hard look of determination appeared on his handsome visage. Zabuza started to openly laugh at this. That's rich. You think some snot-nosed punk, no older than 14, could best me in a fight? You honestly overestimate him or underestimate me. Zabuza mocked loudly. Naruto smirked. So you think this will be a piece of cake? Prove it. Naruto challenged. Zabuza shook his head in amusement. I would back down now. You're not good enough to play with the big kids. Zabuza mocked. Jonin or not, no kid would be able to beat him. Naruto merely glared back. So if I win, you come back with us, what do you get if you win? Naruto asked. Zabuza grinned under his bandages. Smart boy. When I win, you will pay me the equivalent to what Gato would pay me for the bridge builder's head, or give me the bridge builder. Chojuro looked uneasy. How much, exactly, was Gato planning on paying you? The swordsman asked wearily. 10 million ryo. Chojuro gasped. There was no way they could pay that much, not after the war just ended. Naruto's face morphed into one of pure determination. Chojuro looked over at his companion, obviously uneasy. Don't worry Chojuro ni-san, I won't lose. Naruto stated. Naruto knew he would have to go all out to win this battle. It was a good thing he had recently finished his new jutsu. Zabuza smirked and motioned for Haku to leave. The young girl looked uneasy but soon walked over to the side of the bridge. What about us? Kakashi asked. Stay out of this, was the reply from both Naruto and Zabuza. The two swordsmen stood across from each other. Their eyes gazed into each other. Cold brown gazed into icy blue. Both fighters stood unmoving for what seemed like an eternity, until in a single second a gust of wind blew by. The shinobi disappeared in bursts of speed before a loud clang was heard. The Kubikiri Haucho met in a deadlock of strength with the Kazaiba. Naruto growled as Zabuza pushed him back steadily with his superior strength. The young blonde smirked as he held out his right hand. Wind Palm Jutsu. Naruto yelled as he thrust his hand forward. The blast of wind slammed into the older man, sending him flying through the air. Zabuza grinned as he flipped backwards, landing on his feet, unharmed. Nifty trick you got there. It isn't every day you see a wind user, especially from Kiri. But now we are in my turf. Ninja art. Hidden mist jutsu. Zabuza formed a single hand sign as a deep blanket of mist clouded all view in the area. Naruto growled. He was decent at silent killing, better than most. But he was up against the master. Zabuza was known throughout the land as the demon of the mist, not only because he hailed from Kurigakure, but for his unparalleled mastery of the hidden mist jutsu and silent killing. Naruto knew he was no match for the man in this field. So he decided to change it to his advantage. A huge burst of wind expelled from the young boy's body, blowing away all of the mist in the area. Naruto immediately gasped as Zabuza was nowhere to be seen. He instinctively threw himself to the side, barely avoiding decapitation at the hands of Zabuza's monster blade. That wind is really starting to get annoying. Zabuza growled as he started a set of hand seals. Naruto paled as he immediately recognized the seals. He started a set of his own. The two warriors flashed through hand signs at alarming speeds. They both finished at the same time. Water release. Water dragon jutsu. Zabuza yelled as an enormous water dragon burst through the surface of the water. Wind release. Divine blast. Naruto yelled as a tiger made of wind shimmered to life out of nowhere. The tiger easily trumped the dragon in size. Kakashi widened his eyes in shock. He knows that jutsu. That's an S-rank wind jutsu. Even I don't know that. The mighty tiger let out a deafening roar as it easily tore through the dragon and sailed towards Zabuza at high speeds. Zabuza's eyes widened in shock as dove out of the way. He smirked as the tiger was about to destroy the bridge. The jutsu would easily collapse the entire bridge. Naruto looked apathetically as he put his hands into a ram seal. The divine beast immediately dispersed until it was no more than a small breeze. Now it was Zabuza's turn to stare. This boy's control over the element of wind made Haku's control of ice look mediocre at best. Naruto and Zabuza landed across from each other, both panting. Naruto flashed a grin at Zabuza. The Nuke Nin grinned back under his mask. He hadn't had this much fun in a long time. Naruto disappeared in a burst of speed that shocked even Zabuza. The boy was obviously faster than him, though he was positive he had him beat in the strength department. Metal hit metal as sparks flew from the two blades currently in another deadlock. Zabuza pushed as much chakra as he could to his arms and knocked the blade out of Naruto's hands. Not so tough now are you? Zabuza mocked. Naruto growled as he unsheathed Rukin. The blade ignited into flame as Naruto charged forward. Zabuza barely had time to block the flaming blade as the superheated metal crashed into his own. The ex-Mist Nin was lucky Kubikiri Haucho was made out of indestructible steel, or he was sure the force behind the blade of fire would have destroyed his respective sword. Zabuza pushed the younger boy back as he jumped backwards. Fire too. Just what are you? Zabuza questioned through pants. My name is Terumi Naruto. Remember it? Zabuza's eyes widened in shock. Terumi Naruto. May had a son. No wonder he was so strong. Naruto started a set of seals before he took a deep breath. Fire release. Fire Dragon Bullet Jutsu. Naruto yelled as he exhaled a dragon of fire. The dragon sped towards Zabuza, intent on ending the fight. The dragon crashed into Zabuza, but instead of it burning white hot, it dispersed into steam. The steam lifted to reveal Zabuza with a protective water wall around him. Zabuza grinned before he felt a chakra signature behind him. He turned to see the blonde running towards him at breakneck speeds. Zabuza barely caught a glimpse of a blue ball in the boy's hand. Rasengan. Naruto yelled as he thrusted his palm towards the unsuspecting missing nin. Zabuza's eyes widened in shock. I don't have time to dodge. Zabuza thought as he made a last-ditch effort and stuck his unbreakable sword in front of him. The swirling ball of chakra grinded against the large metal sword as sparks flew wildly. Zabuza smirked, thinking his sword would be enough to stop the attack. He was sadly mistaken as the Rasengan eventually snapped the large sword like a twig. The force of the extra energy sent Zabuza flying backwards. The masked nin would have flown off the edge if it wasn't for the timely intervention of Haku. Zabuza growled as he stood up again. Looking apathetically at the useless weapon, he threw it to the side and charged toward Naruto in a blind frenzy. Naruto smirked. When a ninja was angry, he made more mistakes. Zabuza attempted to plow his fist into the blonde's face, but was stopped short as Naruto blocked the fist and sweep-kicked Zabuza's feet from under him. The demon of the mist grunted as he pushed himself to his feet. He noticed a flash of silver out of the corner of his eyes and turned to see Naruto's blade, Kazaiba. You should take better care of these, kid. Zabuza mocked as he picked up the sword. Immediately blades of wind expelled from the sword, shredding Zabuza's hand. The ex-Mist Nin dropped the sword in shock as he looked at his bloody hand. What the hell? Zabuza grimaced as he unwrapped the bandages from his face. He then proceeded to wrap up his bleeding hand. Naruto looked at Zabuza's unscarred face. The only abnormal thing was the long, sharp teeth, much like Chojiro's. Zabuza mentally hit a wall. Without the use of his right hand, and his sword, there was no way he could win. He couldn't use ninjutsu or kenjutsu. That left one-arm taijutsu. Every odd was against Zabuza. Zabuza's pride wouldn't allow him to give up. He flipped out a kunai and held it in a reverse grip with his left hand. Naruto held Ruken firmly, ready to strike at any moment. The fighters were broken from their battle when they heard clapping. The 8 ninja turned to see Gato surrounded by no less than 100 men. What is the meaning of this, Gato? Zabuza growled. I was never going to pay you anyway. You see, you missing nin are so expensive, but I can't hire ninja from villages, they would never do the kind of jobs I need done. I decided that I would just hire a missing nin, and have a group of bandits take them out when the job is done. I guess there's more ninja than I expected. Gato trailed off, looking at the unscathed Konoha team. Number matter. 100 bandits should be more than enough to deal with 5 kids and 3 adults. Gato sneered. Zabuza growled as he gripped the kunai so hard his knuckles turned white. Naruto grinned. I'll take them all on by myself. Zabuza yelled out as he prepared to charge. He was stopped by Naruto's hand on his shoulder. You're in no condition to fight off this many men, even you wouldn't live. I've got just the jutsu for this. Naruto explained. The demon of the mist grudgingly nodded his head and stepped back. Naruto closed his eyes and held out his palm. Soon a ball of fire shimmered to life in Naruto's hand. The fire was soon surrounded by a cocoon of swirling wind. Kakashi's eyes widened for what seemed like the umpteenth time this fight. Fire and wind were naturally unable to mix. Either Naruto had found a way to do it, or he was somehow keeping the two different types of chakra to mix. You see Gato, fire and wind can't naturally mix, the wind would just superheat the fire and it would explode. I found that using exceptional control I can keep the two elements from mixing while the technique is in my palm. Once the jutsu leaves my palm, however, Naruto grinned as he lobbed the ball towards the group. Common guy's charge. He's bluffing. Gato yelled as he took a few steps back. The ball went sailing into the crowd, shredding everybody it hit. Just when they thought it was over, the fire and wind chakra mixed. Wind and fire release. Supernova. Naruto yelled over the loud winds of his technique. The ball all of a sudden glowed a bright white before it exploded in every direction. What used to be a small army of bandits, was now a lake of blood and gore. Almost every bandit was dead, and the ones who weren't wished they were. The few survivors were covered in third-degree burns, the only thing making them recognizable was their disfigured faces. Zabuza's eyes widened. He now knew that despite the blonde boy's young age, Naruto was easily stronger than him. The only thing that kept the nuke nin alive was that his opponent didn't go for lethal blows. Zabuza looked to see Gato lying in a pool of his own blood. He was almost disfigured beyond recognition. Zabuza smirked as he appeared before the shorter man. This is why you never double-cross the demon of the mist. Zabuza grinned maniacally as he stomped with all his might and Gato's head exploded in a bath of blood under the pressure. Naruto grimaced. It was a very brutal way to kill someone, no doubt. Naruto turned back to Zabuza. Where were we? Zabuza merely shook his head. I know now that I can't win. Not only am I without the use of my right hand, but my sword as well. I give up. Naruto flashed Zabuza a grin before his eyes rolled into the back of his head and he fell backwards. Before Naruto could contact the ground he was caught by Haku. Haku looked into the eyes of this boy, no this man, who had single-handedly beaten Zabuza and killed a group of over 100 bandits afterwards. Is he okay? Sakura gasped out. Kakashi nodded. Yes. I think he is just suffering from chakra exhaustion. He not only used 2A rank jutsu, but 2S ranks as well. The adrenaline is probably just wearing down. Kakashi confirmed. Chojuro nodded and took Naruto out of Haku's hands. Zabuza collapsed onto his knee. I think I need to rest as well. The group nodded and they left back to Tazuna's house with 2 extra companions. Tazuna's house next morning. Naruto awoke from his sleep at the sound of the door creaking open. He turned to see what he assumed was the hunter Nin from before. He noticed with a blush how beautiful she was. He went from her soft brown eyes, to her slightly pale face, down to her shapely body. At this point Naruto shook his head, not wanting to get any ideas. Good morning. Haku greeted. Naruto nodded his head in recognition. We haven't properly met. My name is Haku. The older girl smiled. Naruto's face turned bright red at this. I'm Naruto, Terumi Naruto. The blonde responded with a grin of his own. Haku couldn't help but notice the blonde's boyish good looks. I know you're not here to just say good morning. Naruto raised a single eyebrow. Haku nodded. I wanted to know how it is you're so strong, Haku admitted. Naruto's smile turned into a look of complete seriousness. I'm strong because I train, every day. You seem strong enough already, why is it you keep training? Haku wondered. It's because I'm not strong enough. I need to be strong if I am to fulfill my dream. Naruto responded sagely. And what exactly is your dream? Haku wondered. My dream used to be the Mizukage, and although I still wouldn't mind being it, it isn't my real dream anymore. My dream is to become strong enough so I can protect everyone important to me, everyone in the Mist Village. Haku closed her eyes in thought. So I take it you have many precious people. Naruto nodded. Good. With this Haku took her leave. If you really want me to befriend this boy Zabuza-sama, I will. Flashback. Haku stood next to Zabuza's bed. The demon of the mist was sitting down on his bed in thought. Haku, Zabuza stated, breaking the silence. Yes, the young female answered. Zabuza took a breath in. I want you to befriend this Naruto. Haku blinked a few times. May I ask why? Haku pondered. Because I said so. Need I a reason? Zabuza narrowed his eyes. Haku immediately shook her head. Of course not, Zabuza-sama. I will do what you wish. Haku answered as she left. Mentally she was still wondering what that was all about. Haku, I thought you would finally question me. I guess I really did go too far with you. I hope I'm right and this Naruto will be able to sway you from your beliefs, Zabuza thought with a sigh. Flashback end. Naruto yawned as he shook his head. He really didn't know what that was all about. The girl, Haku, just walked in and asked him a question, then left. He decided some things were better left the way they were as he silently got dressed. Unnamed bridge, 3 days later. The bridge was finally done, thanks to the help of the blonde boy and his shadow clones. Tazuna grinned as he looked at his masterpiece. All it needed was a name. All the ninja were gathered at the gate, all but Naruto and Kakashi. Back at the house, you wanted to talk with me? Naruto asked towards the lazy Jonin. Kakashi nodded as he snapped his book shut. How is it you know the Rasengan? The copy nin asked. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Does it matter? Kakashi glared into the younger boy's eyes. Yes it does. The Rasengan was a sacred jutsu of Konoha, of my teacher. Kakashi was interrupted by Naruto at this point. You mean my father? Naruto asked. Kakashi nodded slowly. That still doesn't explain how you know it. Naruto inwardly cursed. He couldn't tell Kakashi how he knew it, or risk war with Konoha. He also knew he couldn't just say he reinvented it. Or could he? I recreated it. Naruto answered bluntly. Kakashi's eyes narrowed. Bullshit. That jutsu took my sensei 3 years to create. There's no way you could recreate it unless. Naruto's finger itched closer to his sheath. Are you calling me a liar? Kakashi's hand rose up towards his headband. Possibly. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a kunai. Naruto. Hatake. Enough. The two were broke from their heated argument as Chojuro and Zabuza stood lazily in the doorway. Naruto hmphed as he turned on his heel and stormed away. Hatake, it would do you good not to threaten Naruto. He isn't as patient as I am. Chojuro glared as he and Zabuza disappeared in body flickers. Kakashi sighed as he palmed his forehead. What have I done? I may have just made an enemy I shouldn't have, for my sake, and Konoha's. Back at the bridge, Naruto arrived shortly after Zabuza and Chojuro. He didn't seem to be in a good mood. Kakashi soon arrived as well. Tazuna noticed absent-mindedly that the two elite Jonin wouldn't make eye contact with each other. I can't thank you guys enough for what you've done. Now that Gato is gone and we have our bridge, Wave will be free again. I promise I will pay Konoha with the sum of an A- rank mission when Wave gets enough money. Tazuna then turned to the Mist Nin. How much do I owe you guys? He asked. Nothing. Consider it a favor for a neighbor. All Kiri asks is permission to trade through Wave. Chojuro answered. Consider it done. Tazuna shouted as he shook the swordsman's hand. Thank you so much. No problem. Chojuro answered as he and Naruto took off, followed by Haku and Zabuza. They were expected back in Kiri in a few days, so they would have to go fast. Zabuza lazily held a scroll in his hand. Inside the scroll were the 2 parts of the Kubikiri Haucho. He would have to get it fixed back in Kiri. Now all we need is a name. Tazuna trailed off before a knowing look plastered onto his face. I know. The Bridge of Water and Fire, because if it wasn't for Fire Country and Water Country, we wouldn't be here right now. Tazuna shouted as the rest of the village roared in approval. Mizukage's office. Mei was lazily sorting through papers in her office. By her standards, it was way too early to be awake, much less sorting through paperwork. Her sharp ears perked up at the sound of footsteps through the hard wooden door. She immediately recognized the chakra signature of Naruto and Chojuro and let her guard down. Come in, Mei called before Chojuro even knocked on the door. The group proceeded in and Mei smiled at her adopted son. Her eyes softened when she saw Zabuza. I trust the mission went well? Mei asked, suddenly all business. Yes. Gato is dead, Naruto answered. Mei turned to the young girl with Zabuza. Immediately rage flared to life in Mei until she noticed the cold exterior in her eyes. She looked deeper and noticed that inside of the young girl was a soft and caring person, exposed to the cruel world of the shinobi. She could tell that this girl wasn't romantically involved with Zabuza, more so a tool to be used at his whim. Zabuza, who is your friend? Mei asked. This is Haku. Zabuza answered. Hello Haku-san. Mei greeted. Haku nodded. Greetings Mizukage-sama. It is a pleasure to be here today. Haku answered. Naruto, you and Haku need to leave. I need to talk to Chojuro and Zabuza alone. Mei instructed. Naruto nodded. Why don't you two get to know each other better? Mei suggested. Okay. I guess I can treat Haku-san to some food. How about it? Naruto asked. Haku blushed deeply. She had never been on anything that could even remotely be considered a date. She shook her head. This wasn't a date, it was merely a way to get to know each other better. No matter how much she tried to convince herself, she couldn't get the blush to go away. Haku turned to Zabuza. May I Zabuza-sama? Haku asked. Zabuza sneered. You don't need to ask me about this. You're a big girl now. Zabuza answered. Haku nodded and walked out the door with Naruto. Mei immediately activated the silencing jutsu. Zabuza, I brought you here to offer you a position I think you'll like very much. Mei said. What is that? Zabuza questioned apathetically. I want you and Chojuro to recreate the 7 swordsmen of the mist. Mei answered. Chojuro's eyes widened in shock. Zabuza merely raised a single eyebrow. Of course Chojuro would be the first seat, seeing as how he stayed loyal to Kiri throughout it all. Zabuza, you would be the second seat and you two would recommend other members to join. Mei explained. After a long silence, Zabuza eventually nodded his head. That would be acceptable. I accept your offer, Mei. Zabuza answered. A part of Mei was peeved that Zabuza didn't address her as Mizukage-sama, but she knew Zabuza was never one for formality. I accept as well, Mizukage-sama. Chojuro answered. Good. Now do you have any recommendations for other members? The Mizukage asked pleasantly. Chojuro immediately went to speak, only to be cut off by Zabuza. I nominate Terumi Naruto. Zabuza stated bluntly. Mei raised an eyebrow and turned to Chojuro. I second that nomination. Chojuro confirmed. Mei nodded her head. It's official. Terumi Naruto is now the third seat of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. Mei stated as she stamped a paper. She grinned as she reminded herself that in a few weeks' time, she was going to publicly announce the Namikaze clan's re-establishment in Kiri. Mei decided it was best to wait until Kiri and Kumo were formally allied, in case Aiwa decided to try something. She knew that even the Hidden Rock wouldn't be foolish enough to take on the combined forces of Kumo and Kiri. Especially since the two villages had a total of 4 Jinchuriki. With Naruto and Haku walked slowly through the village streets. Naruto glanced out of the corner of his eyes at the girl next to him. He didn't know about her, but this silence was bothering him. So, where were you from? How did you meet Zabuza? Naruto asked, trying to break the silence. Haku's eyes immediately glanced downwards. She was obviously remembering bad times. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring up bad things, you don't have to tell me. Naruto trailed off. It's okay, I was born in a small village in northern water country. I lived with my parents until I was 6 years old. I didn't know this back then, but my mother was originally from a clan that fled Kiri early on in the bloodline genocide. My mother fled and married a normal man, a farmer, in a small village. They were happy for years. One day, I discovered my bloodline, the ice release, the reason my mother is dead. At this point tears were sliding freely down Haku's face. The two were sitting on a bench. I found out and I showed my mother. She slapped me and told me never to do that again. The next day I came home to find my mother dead. My father then tried to kill me, claiming I was some kind of freak. I did the only thing I could. Haku wiped the tears from her face. I killed him. After this I fled my village. I would do anything for food. I stole, ate from garbages, and even ate stray animals. Eventually I just decided I was better off dead. I had no purpose in the world. It was worse than death. That was when Zabuza-sama found me. He gave me a purpose. He found use for me. His use for me was, with Zabuza and Mei, to become a living weapon, a tool for my own use. Zabuza finished his story to Mei. Mei looked angrily at Zabuza. You did what? You used a little girl, someone who had lost everything in life, and shoved your beliefs onto her. How many times have I told you that shinobi are not weapons, we are human beings? Mei shouted. Zabuza looked apathetically. You're wrong. A shinobi is merely a stronger version of a kunai, expendable, replaceable. Or at least that's what I used to think. Throughout all these years, Haku has become like a daughter to me. I know I don't show it. You know I'm no good at emotions and things, Zabuza trailed off. Mei nodded. During the entire time they dated, she had not once had she ever heard the three important words. I know I need help to fix this. I went too far with her. She can't even speak freely anymore. Zabuza admitted. I know just who can fix this. Mei answered truthfully. Who? Zabuza asked. Naruto. Report. Sarutobi addressed towards the Cyclops. Kakashi sighed. The mission was a success. The bridge is completed, but there were a couple slight problems. Kakashi trailed off. Sarutobi looked quizzically at the younger ninja. Problems? Care to clarify? Kakashi took a deep breath. Tazuna was lying about the mission rank. We were at first confronted by the demon brothers of the mist. I tied them up and they were taken by the Anbu, then things got worse. Next, Momochi Zabuza, the demon of the mist, confronted us. I fought him to a standstill and right before I was going to kill him, things got strange. The Sandame's eyes were steadily getting wider, a fresh batch of genin taking on the demon of the mist. He was known throughout the elemental countries as a ruthless killer, and he had the strength to back it up. Go on, Sarutobi motioned for the Junin to continue. Right before I killed him, a group of Senbon came down and pierced his neck. A hunter nin then appeared and claimed to have killed Zabuza. We now know he merely put Zabuza in a false death state. After this, two Kiri Junin appeared and questioned the hunter nin. They claimed she was a fake and that the Yondaime Mizukage had been overthrown. Kakashi took a breath at this point. He turned to see the Sandame with a blank expression on his face. Kakashi, did they say who the new Mizukage was? Sarutobi asked quietly. Kakashi looked skeptical before nodding. Yes. They said her name was Terumi Mei. Sarutobi rubbed his temples. The same woman who had taken Naruto from Konoha was now the leader of a hidden village. What's the matter, Hokage-sama? The lazy Junin asked. Nothing. Now who did you say these Junin were? Sarutobi asked in a low voice. That's where things get even worse. The Junin were Chojuro of the Seven Swordsmen and Terumi Naruto. Sarutobi cringed at the last name. Terumi Naruto. I see you have finally cut all ties with Konoha, Naruto-kun. There's more, Kakashi insisted. The aged Hokage looked directly in his eyes. Naruto knows the Rasengan. Sarutobi all of a sudden had a coughing attack. He knows what? The Sandame shouted as slammed his hands on the table. The Rasengan? I confronted him on it, and he said he recreated it. I don't believe him, but I know one thing. The Rasengan is no longer a jutsu exclusive to Konoha. Kiri, Naruto and Haku walked into a small, family-owned restaurant. Haku could faintly catch whiffs of the wonderful smell of teriyaki. Naruto smiled at the waiter as he bowed to him. Good afternoon, Terumi-sama. Too, I presume. Naruto nodded and the waiter motioned for them to follow him as he led them to a small table. Naruto took a seat across from Haku. My name is Gon and I will be your waiter. Can I start you out with some drinks? Water is fine, Naruto answered. He turned to Haku. I'll have water too, she answered. The waiter nodded and walked away. So Haku, tell me more about yourself, you know likes and dislikes, Naruto asked. Haku frowned. Well, I like to serve Zabuza-sama, Haku answered quietly. Naruto frowned. Come on, you have to like something besides serving others. What do you really enjoy? Naruto persisted. Haku thought for a moment. I enjoy picking herbs, and healing others. I also have always loved the oceans, Haku admitted. Naruto smiled and nodded. And your dream? Naruto asked. My dream is to help fulfill. Haku started only to stop at Naruto's disapproving look. I never really thought about what I want to do with my life, other than what Zabuza-sama wanted me to do. Haku admitted. She hadn't opened up in so long, she'd almost forgotten how. Just then they were interrupted as the waiter set down 2 glasses of water. Are you ready to order? Naruto nodded. I'll take the miso ramen. The waiter sighed. He really should have known better, that was all that Naruto ordered. And for the lady? Gon asked. Haku's sharp eyes skimmed through the menu. I'll take sushi please. Gon nodded and walked away. Haku turned her attention to Naruto. Fine, let's hear more about you. All we've talked about is me. Naruto nodded. Fair enough. Since you were open with me, I'll be open with you. I was born in a large village in Fire Country, Konoha, if you've heard of it. Haku's eyes widened. Of course she'd heard of the largest of the 5 great villages. I wasn't exactly treated well there, for complicated reasons. When I was 5, Mei found me in Konoha. She offered me a chance to go somewhere where I wouldn't be hated or looked down upon. Of course I accepted. We came to Kiri and I've lived here ever since. For my likes, I like training, my friends, ramen, and Kiri. I really don't like people who judge others without knowing them, and people who treat others as less than human. This struck a chord in Haku. All the time she'd been with Zabuza, he rarely treated her as more than a tool. She had grown up thinking that was the way it was supposed to be, but here was another person telling her that that way of life was wrong. My dream is to protect all of my precious people and become the Mizukage. Naruto finished. A small frown formed on Haku's face. Am I one of your precious people? She asked quietly. Naruto looked down into her soft, pleading eyes. Well, you could be. If we get to know each other better, Naruto answered. Haku's heart skipped a beat as her face felt like it ignited into flames. I'd like that. Haku blushed as she looked away. Naruto reached over and felt Haku's forehead. Haku, do you have a fever or something? Your face is awfully red, Naruto asked. Poor Naruto, for all the training and maturity he'd been through, he was still oblivious to one thing, the opposite gender. This action caused Haku to blush an even deeper shade of red, one that would make Hinata Hyuga green with envy. No, I'm fine, Haku insisted as she looked for a distraction. Thankfully, she found just the thing. Looks like our food is here. Naruto turned to see that the food was indeed there. The two finished the rest of the meal in silence. Not an awkward silence, just a peaceful one. Soon the bill was there. I don't have any money, Haku admitted sadly. Naruto shook his head. Don't worry, I'll cover it. Haku nodded and the two walked out. The two walked silently for a few minutes before something dawned on Naruto. Where exactly are you guys staying? We are staying at the Mist Inn until we can find a better place. Haku answered. Naruto nodded and they continued at a regular pace. Haku's mind was a mess of emotions. This feeling, do I have a crush on Naruto? Haku mulled it over in her head. He was sweet, funny, kind, strong and not to mention attractive. She couldn't find one thing wrong with him, yet she didn't know if Zabuza would approve. She shook her head and vowed to somehow bring the subject up to the demon of the mist. Here we are, Naruto said, interrupting Haku from her thoughts. She nodded and turned to him. I had a really good time, the ice user mentioned. Naruto nodded. I did too. Well, I guess I'll see you around. Haku nodded and retreated into the house. She didn't remember the last time she'd shown so much emotion. As soon as the door shut, Naruto turned around. Yes, Zabuza? Naruto asked to seemingly no one. Soon Zabuza stepped out of the shadows. Observant as ever. I just wanted to let you know, if you ever do anything to hurt Haku, I'll kill you, Zabuza answered bluntly. Naruto looked quizzically. Strange, from the way she talks, it seems you couldn't give a rat's ass how she is, Naruto shot back. Zabuza's eyes hardened. Let's get this straight, Naruto. Haku is more than just a tool, I learned this over time. I see her as a daughter, or maybe a niece. I just don't do good with emotion, Zabuza admitted. Naruto stared deep into the older man's eyes, looking for any type of lying intent. He found none. I see. I promise I won't hurt her. I hope I can become good friends with Haku, Naruto stated. A sly smirk formed on Zabuza's face just as Naruto was walking away. Oh, and Naruto. Naruto turned around at this. Use a condom. Naruto's eyes widened as a shocked look appeared on his visage. What? What do you mean? We're just friends. Naruto shouted in protest. Zabuza just flashed him a knowing smirk before he walked into the hotel. Naruto walked away, deep in thought. He'd never had a close friend of the opposite gender before. 2 weeks later, Mei took a deep breath as she looked at the gates of Kiri. She was on her way to the designated meeting spot between the two Kage, a small island village at about the halfway mark between the two countries. She looked at her two escorts. Naruto and Utakata stood next to her. She picked the two, not only for their power, but for another simple fact. They were Jinchuriki. There was no doubt in Mei's mind that the Raikage would bring Ni Yugito and Kurabi, the Jinchuriki of the Two and Eight Tails. This was a simple, yet effective tactic to show the country's power. Mei didn't want Kumo to think they were superior to Kiri, so she would bring her two Jinchuriki, the Six and Nine Tails. It also helped that Mist's Jinchuriki had more combined tails than Kumo's. Naruto, Utakata, move out. At these simple words, the three elite ninja took off at blinding speeds through the mist-covered foliage of Kiri. They would have to move fast. They were expected in 2 days' time. Island Village, 2 days later. Mei and her two escorts walked into a small house. They were greeted by a kind old woman named Kagome. They had chosen this house to use as the meeting spot because it was irrelevant and no one would suspect that they would pick such an insignificant spot to deal with such significant details. Good morning, Mizukage-sama. Raikage-sama is already here. Follow me. Kagome smiled kindly as she led the three Kiri ninja into the dining room. The first person they recognized was the large, dark-skinned body of the Raikage. Next was the equally large, yet stranger, form of Kurabi. Naruto immediately sensed the presence of the Eight Tails. Finally, Naruto's eyes landed on the soft, delicate from a one ni Yugito, container of the two tails. Good afternoon, Mizukage Dono, the Raikage greeted in his rough voice. Good afternoon, Raikage Dono, Mei greeted back as she took a seat. The Raikage took a breath. Before we begin, I'd like you to introduce your escorts. Of course I will do the same. This is Kurabi, and this is Yugito. They house the Hachibi and the Nibi, respectively, the Raikage announced. Mei nodded. This is Naruto, and this is Utakata. They house the Kyubi and the Rokubi, respectively. The Raikage's eyes widened at this. The Kyubi. I was under the impression Konoha had possession of the beast. He questioned in a voice full of shock. Well, yes. Konoha used to be Naruto's village of. I, however, saved him from that place. The people there couldn't see the difference between a demon and a young 5-year-old boy, Mei responded in a cool tone. The Raikage nodded. This agreement was sounding better now. With the power of the 9, 8, 6 and 2 tails, the alliance would be the strongest out there. They would even be stronger than that pesky Konoha-Suna alliance. I see. Well, I have no concerns about this alliance. I have the document right here. The Raikage slid the scroll across the table where Naruto grabbed it. He then handed it to his adopted mother. She nodded at him and broke the seal on the scroll. Her sharp eyes quickly skimmed across the scroll, taking in every detail. I see. Everything looks fine. There's just one thing. Mei took a breath. And that is? The Raikage asked suspiciously. I need your support for an announcement I am going to make. Mei slid a piece of paper over the table. Kurabi picked the paper up and handed it to the Raikage. The Raikage slowly read the document. What? You mean to say this boy is a Namikaze? The last of the Namikaze? The Raikage shouted in shock. The Namikaze were legends throughout the world, every country had heard of them. Yes. Not only that, but he is the son of Konoha's late Yondaime Hokage. I waited for your country to back this up because I fear Iwa and Konoha will be very angry with this announcement. I know neither of them would go against our alliance on their own, let alone work together. Iwa's hate for Konoha is too great for that, Mei answered. The Raikage thought hard for a single long minute. I, the Raikage of Kumo, hereby support the re-establishment of the Namikaze clan in Kiri, he announced as he signed the document. He smiled as he nodded his head in thought. Will Kiri be participating in the Chunin exams this year? He asked bluntly. Mei's face morphed into one of contemplation. I haven't decided yet. Although I am leaning towards no, considering we have only recently become a new nation. Mei explained. The Raikage nodded. A trade route between our villages will open shortly. I will now take my leave, Mizukage Dono, Naruto-san, Utakata-san, the Raikage nodded as he got up. Goodbye Raikage Dono, Mei called back. Naruto all of a sudden had a bad feeling in his gut that something was going to happen, something bad. With the Raikage's party, the Raikage turned to the young woman next to him. She was 17 years old. He grinned broadly. Yugito. Yes Raikage-sama, Yugito asked with a look of uneasiness. When the Raikage sported a smile like that, things went wrong. That Naruto, I want you to do whatever you can to make him fall in love with you. I want our pact with Kiri, more specifically the Namikaze, to stay strong. Yugito's eyes widened in shock. Please Raikage-sama, I beg you to reconsider. I can't marry someone I've never met, let alone someone who couldn't be more than 14 years old. Yugito reasoned. The Raikage's grin morphed into a frown. I will not. You would live longer if you don't question those superior to you. Yugito nodded and looked pleadingly over towards Kurabi. Kurabi merely shook his head, not wanting to get involved. Yugito sighed as she walked with her head down. Maybe this Naruto wouldn't be so bad. As much as she tried to convince herself, she couldn't shake the feeling she had just agreed to something she wouldn't like. Kiri. Naruto and Mei stood in her office. The entire village was gathered for an important announcement. Everyone was chatting, wondering what could be important enough for a meeting of this scale. Are you ready? Mei asked as she pushed the paper to him. Naruto grinned as he scratched his signature onto the paper. Ready as I'll ever be, he responded in a cool tone. Mei nodded as the two opened the door and stepped out onto their deck that overlooked the entire village. The villagers and ninja alike immediately quieted down at the presence of their Mizukage. When Yagura was in charge, anyone who continued to talk in his presence was killed. They knew Mei was different but still quieted at her sight from instinct. People of Kurigakure, I have gathered you here today for an important announcement. You all are here to witness the formal establishment of Kiri's newest clan. I also have here the official approval from the Raikage himself, stating that Kumo would back up the establishment of this clan. Mei trailed off. Gasps were heard throughout the audience. No new clan had established itself in Kiri for decades. I would like to introduce you all to the founder of this new clan, Namikaze Naruto. The villagers' attention immediately glued to Naruto's figure. No one spoke. The silence was so great you could hear the breathing of every individual. Everyone knew about Konoha's Namikaze clan. The most recent Namikaze created the first ever SS-ranked jutsu. How could Mei's adopted son be a relative of Konoha's Yondaime? I know what you're all thinking. The truth is Naruto is really the son of Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime of Konoha. Naruto is also the last Namikaze on Earth. As far as we know, Mei turned to Naruto and held a large circle with a picture of a wave on it. Namikaze Naruto, I hereby bestow on you all the rights of clan head, including a personal estate and seat on the council. Do you accept? Naruto grinned. Yes, Mizukage-sama. I promise I will rebuild the Namikaze here in Kiri, and I will defend my village with all my strength. The crowd erupted into an explosion of cheers. Everyone was extremely happy that Kiri would have the power of the Namikaze. Later that day, Naruto, Chojuro and Zabuza stood in the Mizukage's office. They were all called down for a special mission. Mei took a breath. I have gathered the three of you here today to give you an extremely important mission. You are to track down, and convince, Kurosuke Raiga to come back to Kiri, offer him a seat in the swordsman. You are not to use force unless it is in self-defense. The three swordsmen nodded their heads. Zabuza, since you knew Raiga the best, you will lead this mission. Hopefully your knowledge of his habits will help, Mei explained. Wait, you have no idea where he is. Zabuza shouted, a tick mark appearing above his eyebrow. Mei smiled, not a clue. The three swordsmen face faulted. After they finally regained posture they saluted their Mizukage. We will find him, Mizukage-sama, Chojuro assured. Yeah, you can count on us. Naruto said, adding in his own 2 cents. Zabuza merely nodded his head. You have 1 month. The three nodded and disappeared in bursts of speed, intent on making early work on their mission. Iwagakure, the old form of the Tsuchikage, sat in the leading seat in a large council chamber. His weary eyes snapped open as the doors closed. Today we are gathered for an important discovery, Onoki spoke with much authority, despite his small stature. The council immediately began to whisper. In Iwa, unlike Konoha, the council held little power over militaristic issues. The council was controlled by the Tsuchikage and they could only overrule his decisions with a unanimous vote. What are you talking about, Onoki? An old man asked wearily. He was one of the Tsuchikage's main advisors. The Namikaze clan is being re-established, Onoki trailed off. This caused the council to erupt in an uproar of noise. What? We were told that accursed yellow flash was the last of the Namikaze. A council member shouted out. Damn Konoha and its ignorance. Several things like this were shouted around as well. Silence. Onoki shouted as he slammed his small palm on the table. Everyone silenced at this. Despite their Tsuchikage's old age, they knew he was still strong enough to kill them all. The Namikaze clan is not being re-established in Konoha. It is being re-established in Kiri, Onoki answered calmly. If you looked closely you could tell he was holding back his immense rage. How is this possible, Onoki? Yuyu, one of the clan heads, asked with a worry-filled voice. Everyone else looked shocked as well. It appears that the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha had a son, Onoki spat out with hate. It was no secret that the Tsuchikage hated Minato Namikaze with a passion. It made sense when you thought about it. Minato had single-handedly destroyed over a third of Iwa's forces. Not only that, but his son is a Jinchuriki. Apparently, he wasn't treated well and was found by someone of Kiri, someone who was on the rebellion's side. He is now a Junin at the tender age of 13, the old Tsuchikage explained. He was expecting uproars of noise, cries for death, and wages of war. He was expecting screaming men. What he got was nothing like he expected, silence. Dead silence. Finally, after the initial shock was over, someone finally decided to speak up. How is this possible? We must have him killed immediately. If he could ever become half of what his father was, we will be finished. A clan head yelled. What is it you want to do? If we kill him, Kiri will wage war with us, Onoki shot back. A war they cannot win. We are currently the second strongest of the great villages. The clan head responded. Onoki shook his head. Kiri is currently in an alliance with Kumo, the combined forces of not only Kumo and Kiri, but 4 of the 9 Jinchuriki would leave us crippled beyond repair. Don't get me wrong, I would love to hang the head of this boy above my fireplace, it is just out of the realm of possibility, Onoki explained. The council grudgingly accepted the fact. But, if we make it look like an accident, we might be able to get away with it. According to my sources, the Namikaze is currently going a mission with Zabuza and Chojuro of the 7 Swordsmen. If he was to go, Mia, during this mission, Kiri would have no one to blame but themselves. The small Tsuchikage grinned at his plan. The rest of the council immediately agreed and called in a group of people they knew could handle the job, Ryoku and Deki Shikaku, the hidden deaths of Iwa. Ryoku and Deki Shikaku have been said to have never failed an assassination attempt. They were originally from a no-name village from the far west, but their village was destroyed. Since then, they had worked as mercenaries, going to the highest bidder. Each was said to be stronger than an Anbu. Konoha, are you sure? Hiruzen asked as he took a puff from his pipe. Jiraiya nodded his head. His eyes held more seriousness than Sarutobi had ever seen in his life. Yes, Naruto is re-establishing the Namikaze clan in Kiri. The official announcement was realized earlier today. The announcement was backed by the Raikage. Apparently they have an alliance now, Jiraiya explained. Sarutobi's eyes clenched shut. He frowned as he gazed longingly at the picture of Minato. Tell me, what would you do, Minato? Sarutobi thought. Sarutobi hit the intercom, please alert all the clan heads and other members of the council. There will be an emergency meeting of the council in 30 minutes' time. Yes, Hokage-sama, a static voice called back. Council chamber. The clan heads and advisors were gathered in the chamber, talking about what the meeting could be about. Even Danzo seemed to be lost in thought. Everyone quieted down as the Hokage entered the room with Jiraiya of the Sannin. Sarutobi-sama, what is so important you have interrupted all our personal time for? Hiashi asked. Truthfully, he thought his time would be of better use somewhere else. If only he knew. I will get to that. Sarutobi took a deep breath before he rubbed his temples as he attempted to fight of the headache he was bound to develop. I have called you all here today to tell you of some disturbing information, regarding another of the major villages, Sarutobi explained. First of all, I'd like to announce that Kiri is under new command. Apparently the Yondaime Mizukage, Yagura, was found dead and overthrown by a rebellion. The new Mizukage is Terumi Mei. Hiruzen announced. This is not news, Hokage-sama. Everyone has heard of the Mist's rebellion, Shikaku Nara, head of the Nara clan muttered lazily. That is not why I called you here. Apparently Mist has decided to re-establish a certain clan, a clan that once belonged to Konoha. The council immediately silenced. The clan is the Namikaze clan. At this the clan heads erupted into noise. That is not possible, Hokage-sama. Minato was the last Namikaze. Sume Inuzuka argued in her alpha voice. What right does Mist have to re-establish a clan of Konohas? Hiashi shouted. Quiet down and I will explain. The current clan head of Mist's Namikaze clan is, Sarutobi took a deep breath and cleared his throat. Namikaze Naruto. A few select people in the room immediately gasped in surprise. Hiashi Hyuga, for one, was one of the only people that knew the secret of Naruto's parentage. What do you mean? The only Naruto I've ever heard of is, Shuza trailed off as realization crawled onto his large visage. Namikaze Naruto, formerly Uzumaki Naruto, is the last living member of the Namikaze clan. He is the son of our Yondaime Hokage. Sarutobi admitted. What are you saying? You're saying the Jinchuriki, that we were told was dead, is not only alive, but is the son of the Yondaime. And not only that, but he is recreating the Namikaze clan in Kiri. Kaharu screeched. Sarutobi nodded slowly. This is absurd. We must reclaim Minato's son immediately. He was a citizen of Konoha. Homura announced. Sarutobi shook his head. We cannot do that. Legally, all citizens have a right to live where they want to. Also, he is officially not only a citizen, but a shinobi of Kiri, Hiruzen explained. But Hokage-sama, Naruto was only 5 when he was kidnapped. You must have a legal guardian to choose for you to live somewhere else. Homura argued. The Hokage's eyes narrowed. Well, Naruto would have had a legal guardian, however, he was kicked out of the orphanage. He also left on his own free will, so, technically, he was not kidnapped. Then we will force Kiri to give him back. They wouldn't risk war with us over one person, Koharu argued, backing up Homura. I disagree. War would be illogical. Not only would we be threatening them over their clan leader, but they also have the support of the Raikage, as well as an alliance with Kumo, Shibi voiced his 2 cents. Sarutobi nodded at this. As much as I hate to say it, Naruto is out of our control now, just as the Namikaze are no longer a distinct clan, council dismissed. With this, the clan heads and advisors all stormed out of the room, all with different thoughts running through their minds. No one had as much to think about as Danzo. This is unfortunate. I can't have the Kyuubi container living, he could become a major threat to Konoha. What to do, what to do. Sarutobi's office. Hokage-sama, Kakashi shouted as he rushed into the office. What is it, Kakashi? Sarutobi asked as he looked up from his paperwork. Is it true? Did Naruto really rebirth the Namikaze in Kiri? Kakashi asked. Sarutobi merely nodded. Kakashi sighed as he took a seat. I wonder how Sensei would feel about this. Would he be angry with Naruto having left Konoha? Kakashi trailed off. Or would he be angry at the way Konoha practically forced Naruto out? Kakashi finished. Sarutobi took a puff from his pipe. I wonder the same thing myself. A loud buzz sounded, alerting the aged Hokage that his secretary was talking over the intercom. Hokage-sama, someone is here to see you. They say it's important. The Hokage grumbled as he pressed the button down. He figured it'd be some high-ranking Konoha official, demanded the return of Naruto, send them in. The door creaked open to reveal a womanly figure. The woman had fiery red hair, going down to her mid-back. She had piercing green eyes and had a pale complex. The woman was dressed in a green and white battle dress, cut off above the knee. The dress had no sleeves. She also had a fishnet suit underneath the dress. She wore matching green sandals and Sarutobi noticed the spiral symbol on her shoulder. He also noticed the headband on her forehead. It had a matching spiral. Good evening, Sarutobi, Kakashi, the woman announced as a smirk formed on her face. Sarutobi paled like he'd seen a ghost. That voice, that hair, those eyes, they could only belong to one person. A slight whisper, barely loud enough for the woman to hear, escaped from the Hokage's lips. Uzumaki Kushina. Ryoku and Deki stood towering over the small form of the Tsuchikage. They were surprised to have been summoned. It was a well-known fact that Ryoku and Deki were not friends of Rock. During the Third Shinobi War, Konoha had used the 2 masters of assassination to gather information of Rock, even going as far as assassinating a high-ranking Rock Junin. It is a pleasure to have you here, Onoki sputtered through clenched teeth. It was no surprise that Onoki was not fond of the 2 Shikaku. Enough with the pleasantries, I know you hate us because we assassinated your nephew. Onoki's eyes glared a hole into the frames of the 2 brothers. Ryoku was a young man, about 20 or so, with short black hair and eyes blacker than the night sky. He was dressed in tight black pants and a tight black shirt. He also seemed to carry a finely sharpened dagger of sorts. Most uncommon for a ninja. His brother was of the same build and about the same height, both being around 5 feet 9 inches. Deki was dressed basically in the same clothes, but instead of a dagger he carried a scroll and ink brush. He appeared to be some kind of seal master. Deki also looked like a mirror image of his brother, except, instead of the soulless black eyes his brother possessed, planted into his eye sockets were 2 piercing golden eyes. So why is it you want us here? Deki finished his brother's sentence. Onoki growled at the young man. How dare he not respect the Tsuchikage, a man who had fought Uchiha Madara and lived to tell the tale. You're correct in your assumptions, but we have a mission only you two can complete, the small man insisted. A lone eyebrow rose on Ryoku's face. We're listening. Onoki took a breath. We wish for you to assassinate Namikaze Naruto. If the two brothers were nervous, they didn't show it. I see. So you wish for us to assassinate him, and you chose us because we have a history of not working well with Iwa. Kiri would never put the two together. Ryoku trailed off. He looked at his brother. They both seemed to think for a minute before Deki turned to the aged Tsuchikage. We'll do it, Deki explained. Onoki looked to Ryoku, who merely nodded his head as well. Okay. He will be traveling along with Chojuro and Zabuza of the Hidden Mist. I trust you will be able to section him off and capture him on his own. Onoki asked. Yes. For our assistance we require 20 million ryo, Ryoku answered. Onoki's eyes bulged out of their sockets. 20 million ryo? Are you insane? That's a small fortune. You're lucky I don't have you killed here. The two brothers nodded at each other. I see. Then it seems we are done here. The Shikaku brothers turned and started for the door. 1, 2, Deki counted down in his head. Wait, Onoki called back. He growled in his head at what he was about to do. We will pay you your money. If you fail, however, and Namikaze doesn't kill you, I will. The brothers nodded in sync. Of course. We will take our leave now. Ryoku seemed to concentrate, and a wave of pure darkness shimmered to life and wrapped around the two brothers. When the wave cleared, they were nowhere in sight. Konoha. Kakashi's single visible eye widened in shock at the sight of the woman he long thought dead. His shock soon turned to confusion and anger. Kushina. I thought we were clear on our arrangement. Sarutobi glared at the woman standing across from him. Kakashi looked at his leader in shock. He knew Kushina was still alive. What? Kushina, you're still alive? But how? Kakashi sputtered out. Kushina looked at Kakashi with a small smile full of melancholy. Ah, Kakashi, it's been far too long. You've grown so much, Kushina mumbled with a far-off look in her eyes. Kakashi's anger flared as his chakra spiked. You've been alive all this time. You left me, you left your son. How dare you defile not only Naruto's childhood but Minato's sacrifice to this village. Kakashi shouted as he unconsciously focused chakra to his palm, as if mentally preparing for a Reikiri. A loud smack echoed throughout the room. Kushina took her palm away from Kakashi's covered face as anger flared to life in her eyes. How dare you? How dare you even think I would abandon my son? I loved Naruto more than anything in the world. I raised him for 9 months. I would never have abandoned him if he was still alive. Kushina shouted. Kakashi looked in confusion. That thing is not my son. He is the demon, the Kyuubi. The same demon that took away my friends, Minato, and worst of all, that demon took away my baby boy. Tears were welling up inside of Kushina as she remembered that day. Flashback. Kushina smiled fondly at the small form of her 2-week-old son. She stroked his whiskered cheek as the sounds of his even breathing assaulted her eardrums. So much like Minato, you even look like him. Kushina thought. She continued to stroke his cheek lovingly as Naruto started to coo at the attention. Kushina started to giggle until something entirely unexpected happened. Red chakra seeped from her young baby's abdomen as it flooded through his system. The chakra burned Kushina's skin with a hiss and she pulled her hand back in shock. Naruto, Kushina called down as the baby's eyes snapped open. Instead of the deep blue orbs she had grown so fond of, she stared into a pair of blood-red eyes with vertical pupils. Kushina screamed as she jumped backwards and landed on the ground in tears. That thing, the demon, it was not her son. Danzo had been right when he warned her about this. She cradled her legs into her chest and began to sniffle as hot tears flowed down her slender cheeks. I have to get out of here, Kushina mumbled as she drifted into a dreamless slumber. The next morning Kushina woke up to the sounds of Naruto crying. Her eyes snapped open as images of the previous night flooded her brain. She slowly turned her head to see Naruto with his baby blue eyes, looking normal than ever, and staring back into hers. It could have been a trick of the light, but she could have sworn they flashed red for a fraction of a second. Kushina panicked as she ran out of the room. Naruto's soft blue eyes stared back at the place his mother had once been. Tears welled in the corner of his eyes as he began to bawl again. Crying at the last time he'd ever see his mother, crying at the fate he would have to endure without a mom. Flashback end. Kushina blinked away the tears as she stared into the Sandame's eyes. Sarutobi noticed Kushina had been out of it for a second or two. It doesn't change the fact that Kakashi started, only to stop as the Hokage raised a hand up. Kakashi, I think you've made your point. Kakashi nodded and took a seat, staring hatefully at the form of his late sensei's wife. I thought we were under agreement. I would erase all records of you ever existing, and you would leave and never come back. Sarutobi stated with no small amount of shame in his voice. Kushina nodded her head. Our agreement was I'd never come back, as a Konoha citizen, Kushina explained. Sarutobi's eyebrow rose. It never said I couldn't come as a diplomat and sensei for a team of Whirlpool Genin, Kushina smirked. What are you saying? Whirlpool's been destroyed for years. Sarutobi asked, confused. It's been rebuilt. And I've brought a team for the upcoming Chunin exams, the redhead explained. Sarutobi's eyes narrowed. I see. As much as I'd like to deny you, which I'd love more than anything right now, I can't. But be warned, Kushina. Should any of your students, or you, misbehave at all inside Konoha grounds, I will go to the full extent of Konoha's foreign policy to make sure you will regret it. Now there is something I'd like you to see, Sarutobi muttered as he searched through his drawer. He pulled out a scroll that he tossed to Kushina. She caught it effortlessly. What is it? Read it, Sarutobi insisted. Kushina sighed and broke the seal on the scroll. She carefully pulled it open. Dear Mommy and Daddy, this is Naruto. Oji-san told me you both died in the Kyuubi attack, but I think you could still be out there. If you're still out there and Oji-san showed you this, then don't worry, I know you didn't leave me. Oji-san told me that you both loved me a ton. I wanted to tell you that I love you too. I just wanted to let you know that I'm leaving for someplace like Kiro or something like that, with my new friend. She said she would take me there and they would treat me good and I'd become a super strong ninja. May was even nice enough to write this letter for me. I just wanted you to know that if you're still out there, you'll be hearing about me in the future as the strongest ninja ever. Believe it. With love, Uzumaki Naruto, future ninja. Kushina felt a small pain in her chest. What is this? Is this some kind of sick joke by the Kyuubi? Does it know I'm still alive, or is this something more? For the first time in 12 years Kushina questioned her decision. She quickly shook her head and discarded those thoughts. He was 5, Kushina was brought out of her thoughts by the soft voice of the Hokage. What? Kushina stumbled out. Naruto. He was 5 when he wrote that. It was the last time I've seen him, Sarutobi explained. Kushina shook her head and tried to put on an uncaring facade. Inward her heart and her brain were having a fierce war. Her brain told her that there was no way that was her son, but deep down her heart thought differently. I will take my leave then, Hokage-sama, Kushina stated as she clenched the scroll tightly. She turned on her heel and walked out the door. Kakashi turned to his leader. I can't believe it, Sarutobi merely nodded and closed his eyes. Outside Hokage's office, Kushina walked out the door of the Hokage tower. She turned to see her 3 students in the same place they were before. Her first student, Iyashi Oratsu, was a young boy that was more on the shorter side. He had dull white hair and gray eyes. He wore a gray robe with a black belt. He had a mesh shirt underneath his robe and had bandaged legs. He was dressed in blue ninja sandals and wore his whirlpool headband around his neck. He had a long katana strapped to his waist. He came from a prestigious clan of samurai ninja hybrids that had helped to reform Whirlpool. The next student was named Hade Tada. He was a sight to behold. Hade had neon green hair with eyes sparkling between green and purple. He wore a green shirt with a red flak jacket and green pants. The third could be considered a mirror image of Kushina. She had fiery red hair tied up into a bun. One single bang flowed down the side of her cheekbone. She wore a long red battle kimono with the whirlpool spiral on the back. She sported her headband as a belt, much like her odd-looking teammate. What happened? Iyashi asked with a bored look on his face. We are going to be entering the Chunin exams. I want you all to make Whirlpool proud, Kushina answered. A small frown appeared on the red-headed Genin's delicate face. What's the matter, Mom? I mean Sensei. The girl asked. She was not used to having her mother as a sensei. Nothing, Tenshi. Don't worry about it, Kushina lied as she walked away. Tenshi followed close behind along with Iyashi and Hade. This is a mistake. Naruto is dead, this is just the Kyuubi toying with me, Kushina thought. A deep part inside her argued against this, but she pushed it down. After all, she had her students and daughters training to worry about. Small inn, outside the land of rice fields. Naruto, Chojuro and Zabuza walked into an inn. They had been traveling for days and had all agreed to take a break. The three walked up to the counter of the inn. Hello, welcome to the Seiju Inn, how may I help you? They were greeted by a kind old woman, wearing a plain gray dress. We would like 2 rooms, please, Chojuro asked in a polite voice. The woman nodded and took 2 keys off the wall. Here you are, I hope you enjoy your stay. The woman had long since known the culture of shinobi. They would come and go, no more than a day at a time. They would never give their names or other information. She also knew that denying them a room on the thought of them not paying would not help. Either way, they would get what they wanted. The three got together in one of the rooms. Okay. Raiga was last spotted near this area. Naruto, go around and get information from restaurants and civilians, seeing as you are, frankly, the most normal. Zabuza, you check anywhere you could think Raiga would hang out in a place like this. I've got someone to meet with, Chojuro explained. The two nodded and disappeared in blurs of speed. Naruto walked down the road. He had taken off his headband and Junin vest, as he had come to know that people treated you differently when they knew you were a shinobi. They were more hesitant. An odd look appeared on Naruto's face as he grabbed his arm. There was a shallow cut running down his lower arm. The cut was nothing to worry about, as it healed almost before he could take a look at it. He shook his head and continued walking. Out of the shadows of the building 2 figures shimmered into existence. Deki held a small bloodied knife. I got it, he confirmed as he spread it on the scroll. Soon the blood morphed into an image of Naruto, walking down the road. You can't escape from us now, Namikaze. Soon your head will be ours. Deki chuckled as his brother smirked in triumph. With Naruto, Naruto continued to walk down the road. He couldn't take his mind off of the strange cut. The blonde could have sworn he felt 2 faint chakra signatures around him, but he couldn't be sure. Probably some stray animal, Naruto reassured himself mentally. Naruto couldn't help but notice all the unusual glances he was getting from the civilians. Most of them were young girls. He would notice them stare at him, blush, and giggle. It all confused him, but he continued walking nevertheless. Soon Naruto noticed a restaurant that seemed to be popular, if the hordes of people were any indication. Naruto walked up to the front desk. How may I help you, sir? Would you like a table? The young waitress asked with a faint blush on her cheeks. Sure. First I'd like to know something, Naruto trailed off. Of course, the girl blushed fiercely. Have you seen any strange people lately? Or heard anything? Naruto asked. The girl practically sank into her clothes at the lack of the question she wanted. She thought about it for a second. No, nothing unusual. Why? She asked. No reason. Just get me a table, for one please, Naruto explained. She nodded and led him to the table. I'll be back to serve you momentarily. With those final words, the waiter disappeared into the back room. Naruto glanced around the room, looking for any suspicious activity. He found none until he noticed two people sitting in a far corner. They seemed to be talking unusually quiet. Naruto focused chakra to his ears to hear what they were saying. So did you get the stuff? Yes. We will bring it back to Lord Raiga soon. I see. Notify me when the plan is to happen. The man then got up and walked out the door. Naruto's eyes widened as he got up from his table. He followed the man, just far enough so no normal ninja could detect him. He followed the man through the city, and into the forest. Soon enough he reached a particularly dark section of the forest. His sharp eyes made out the figure of the man standing across from him. The faint glow of twilight twinkled throughout the forest. It was getting late. The man had stopped. He now knew whoever this was, he had been tricked. Naruto cursed himself for falling for something like that and took in his surroundings. Soon enough a second man literally appeared from the shadow of a nearby tree. Namikaze Naruto, the cloaked figure asked calmly. Who are you? Naruto shot back, just as calmly. That is of no business to you. Just know one thing, today you will die. The two men threw off their cloaks and charged forward at alarming speeds. Naruto dodged a nearly fatal strike from a blade and pulled out K's Yaba. He focused his chakra and prepared for battle. Konoha. Kushina sighed as she looked at her young daughter, sitting on the couch of their hotel room and studying a scroll. I love her more than anything, just how I loved Naruto, Kushina thought as she quickly discarded those thoughts. Her son was dead, as was her husband. All that was left to remind her of him was that demon, hiding beneath the skin of her dead son, ready to strike at any given moment. Kushina was interrupted from her thoughts by a pounding on the door. She walked over and looked out the peephole. Standing on the other side of the door was none other than Hiashi Hyuga, the leader of Konoha's most prestigious clan, also, Minato's ex-teammate. Tenshi. Go to your bedroom, Kushina ordered. Her daughter looked in shock. But why? She countered. Just listen to me, Kushina insisted. Tenshi sighed and went to her bedroom. She focused chakra to her ears, wanting to know what the two were going to talk about. Kushina opened the door and gazed at the Hyuga head. Greetings Hiashi-sama. To what do I owe the honor? Kushina greeted. Hiashi nodded. Throughout all his life he had grown used to holding back his emotions. He was doing everything he could to not strike the woman down at that moment. Kushina. May I come in? Hiashi responded. Kushina nodded and opened the door, beckoning him in. The two sat on the sturdy couch. What is this about? Kushina asked impatiently. Why? Hiashi nearly growled as he tried his best to maintain his cool. He and Minato had been very close growing up. He was rightfully upset that his late friend's spouse had left their only son to die. Could you be clearer? Kushina asked innocently, trying to pretend she didn't know what was being asked. Why did you betray Minato? You left his only son on the street, to die, Hiashi explained. Kushina felt somewhat empty at the way Hiashi put it. He made it sound like Naruto was only ever Minato's son, not hers as well. I did no such thing. Minato and Naruto were both dead. Out of spite the demon fox stole the visage of my son. He mocked me. He would have killed me should I have stayed, Kushina countered. Hiashi shook his head. In his cold white eyes two emotions were present, disappointment and pity. You truly are a fool. You doubt Minato's skill in sealing. He was the best seal master ever to walk this earth, Hiashi pointed out. Kushina sighed. I never doubted Minato's seals, not once. But even he had a limit. The Kyuubi was a demon of imaginable power, you felt it as did I. You should know just as well that a demon like that shouldn't be able to be contained by a mere boy, Kushina shot back. Kushina could tell that Hiashi's anger was growing. You are correct about that. But you know as well as I the power of the death god. You gave up on your son before even doing enough research to know about the seal. Minato powered the seal with the death god itself, a force even greater than that of the Kyuubi, Hiashi explained. Kushina faltered for a second before regaining her composure. Even so, what I saw was not my son, it was undoubtedly the demon. I will not be made a fool of by you, Hyuga-sama. If you are so fond of it, why didn't you use the Hyuga's infinite wealth and political support to protect it? Kushina turned the table on the clan head. Hiyashi's face morphed into one of regret. I have made my mistakes too. I didn't use the Hyuga's powers because we would have lost prestige for helping Naruto. I however realize now that it was a mistake not to help the last living relative of Minato. And now it's part of the bloody mist, Kushina smirked. Hiyashi shook his head and took a newspaper out of his pouch. You are behind on the times, Hiyashi handed the newspaper to Kushina. It was titled, Mist Revolt Over. New Mizukage. Terumi Mate Takes Power. Kushina's sharp eyes took in every detail of the paper. She read about how Naruto was apparently a large part of the winning of the war, and how he had saved Mist from the wrath of the Six Tails host that went haywire. Hiyashi stood up and dusted himself off. I will leave you with a single piece of advice. If you ever see Naruto again, find out more about him before you jump to conclusions. That is, if he or the Mizukage don't kill you first. With that, Hiyashi left the hotel room of Whirlpool's team. Kushina threw the newspaper away, not wanting to think about it anymore that night. The door to the bedroom creaked open as Tenchi stepped out. Her eyes were red and puffy. Is it true? Do I really have an older brother? Tenchi asked with a sniffle. Kushina looked conflicted as she stared at the ground. Having heard enough, Tenchi ran into the bedroom with fresh tears. Kushina sighed as she glanced one time at the newspaper one last time before retreating to her own bedroom. She had a lot to think about. The next day Kushina and her team walked down the road. She was surprised at the number of blank or hateful stares she was getting. She didn't know she would get this kind of reaction. From what she'd heard, the demon had re-established the Namikaze clan in Kiri. Every time she mentally called it, the demon, she would feel a pang in her heart. Kushina didn't know why, but she knew whatever it wasn't right. Kushina-sensei, why are we getting such treatment? Iyashi asked with lots of surprise. It's because we are from a village thought destroyed. Kushina assured. Iyashi seemed to accept this answer, but Tenchi still wouldn't speak to her mother for some reason. Hade looked at his sensei after seeing his teammates, and long-time crushes, attitude toward her mother. He knew something was up. I don't like it, Hade commented shyly. Kushina nodded her head in understanding. The team soon arrived at the entrance of Konoha's Ninja Academy. Remember to make Whirlpool proud. If you do well in this, it will be tremendously beneficial to our reputation. Don't get overconfident and remember there is always someone better than you, Kushina reminded her students. Iyashi rolled his eyes and nodded. Hade nodded his head and Tenchi didn't respond. Kushina smiled and walked away as the three entered the academy. They were prepared for anything and everything. They were the best genin in the entire Whirlpool village. As soon as the three entered the main door on the third floor, they noticed the entire room focus their attention on them. Hade shrunk into his clothes from the intense gazes. One team seemed to be glaring in their direction, more specifically at Tenchi. What's the problem, Heiyai? A female asked her teammate. He was shirtless, wearing only a pair of black pants. He also had matching ninja sandals. He had black hair and green eyes. That girl. Her name is Uzumaki Tenchi, Heiyai explained to his teammate. She wore a pair of tight navy blue pants and matching sandals. She had a white shirt with the mist symbol on it. Above that she wore a dark blue coat. Her name was Taira. Wait, she has the same name that Naruto-senpai used too, Taira whispered. I know. Her chakra feels very familiar to Naruto's as well. If I'd have to guess, I'd say they were family, the third teammate announced, adding in his 2 cents. He had brown hair and brown eyes. He was of average height and looked to be thin. He had glasses and wore a dark green trench coat and a dark blue shirt. He had matching pants and sandals. He seemed to be the smart one of the group. His name was Eigo. Whoever she is, Anyone who is related to Naruto-senpai and knew about how he was before, I don't like them, Heiai whispered harshly. The other two teammates nodded and continued to glare at the similar-aged girl. It was a well-known fact that Naruto was a Jinchuriki in Konoha. Most people even knew about some of his life before coming to Kiri. Heiai was a young orphan who had been adopted by a retired Chunin. He dreamed of becoming a ninja and idolized Naruto for being so strong and young. He knew one thing. Throughout this entire exam, his one goal would be to absolutely humiliate the Uzumaki and her team.